sudden.
Yeah, and the LPs there might be really interesting. But again, like the Saudi Public Investment Fund is really significant here. If we remember, they already held 10% anyway. And in this memo that the EA CEO sent to staff, used the word sports and used the words entertainment. And this is, having spent a bit of time with him over the summer, I think this is very much like, okay, we know the domains we need to push into. Saudi's already going in that direction. This makes sense. Mm-hmm. The counter argument is this EA executives looking at the writing on the wall that this industry has a pretty slippery future?
Interesting, but it sounds like if they want to get into these, take their intellectual property and take it to different areas, different platforms, different usages, like something like the Walt Disney Company has always said that they look at their content as IP, intellectual property.
That's the model.
Yep, that's the model. I mean, it's better to do it as a private company, presumably, than one where we have to report quarterly.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm a journalist. I don't have skin in this game, but the sentiment on all the deals I've covered in the last 5 years since I moved to Silicon Valley, so to speak, it's you can do a lot more quickly when you're private.
Away from the headlines and prying eyes of the media.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the chip business. Huawei, the double output of its top AI chip. Is it to compete against NVIDIA?
Well, remember, doubling from very little is still very little. So the story for Huawei and the 910 CSN, which is their flagship accelerator, they do very low volumes. But the political environment makes it such that they can serve Chinese technology customers who are under pressure from their government to not buy NVIDIA's now permitted chips on the US side. And so, NVIDIA and Jensen Huang in interviews on Bloomberg television for this whole year has been saying Huawei are a lot further ahead on AI chips than we've given them credit for. Their chips perform as well as some of our best chips. And so this data, citing sources, of course, in the reporting, is really important as it gives some very clear numbers for 2 years of what they plan to ramp up to.
Right, and the Ascend product line overall in 2026 will get up to 1.6 million dies. Is that also a drop in the bucket, or is that a meaningful number?
It's relatively still a drop in the bucket, and the thing that in our reporting is so key is there's an acknowledgement from sources that the Huawei chip is still not as good as NVIDIA's best chip. Mm-hmm. But if you package it in a system and you offer it as cloud computing capacity, which is the whole Huawei strategy, it's an attractive proposition for inference. In other words, running the AI models, not necessarily training.
Ed, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it. Ed Ludlow, Bloomberg Tech co-host. He's based in San Francisco. We've got him here in New York this week, the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. So we grab him here in studio to get the latest on all things technology. Coming up, we're going to check in with Nathan Naidu, Bloomberg Intelligence Technology Research Analyst. We'll get his thoughts on this EA deal, what it might mean for the gaming space going forward. Phil Orlando, Chief Equity Market Strategist and co-head of Client Portfolio Management at Federated Hermes. He's going to join us as well, get the latest call on the markets here. As we kind of get into the 10 o'clock hour, the S&P's up 26 points, the Dow's minus 50, NASDAQ's up 200. Market has no idea what's going to be. We'll have more coming up this week.
Hello, my name is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and we are live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, and my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I will also be re-releasing this on all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please subscribe to all those channels. If you like the work that I do, all this content is for free. Please help support the work by sharing the links, making sure you subscribe, asking your social media to follow me. You can also donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel and my Substack channel. I have a new Substack. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. Thank you for joining. We are doing this live stream on September 29th. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great products that I offer. I have ebooks, supplements, and course material on immunology and pulmonology. If you pay attention to my protocol to slow down the aging process, you're gonna start getting your different organ systems healthier, and you're gonna notice a vitalization of your body. So I have this healthcare protocol, this anti-aging protocol that'll slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. So please follow my advice on this, especially during the fall and the winter season. With that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver soaps that I offer. You can get it in lemongrass, charcoal tea tree, peppermint, and also in lavender. So get a few bars for your household. Very high quality soaps made from structural nano silver. You're gonna need this for the fall and the winter season. Get a few bars for your household. Use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. It's all caps. Discount number 5. You get $5 off. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last, and that free gift you're gonna need for the fall and the winter. Trust me. All right. With that, let's start taking a look at some of the news. So let's take a look at the coal industry and the energy department.
We just connected. She found comfort in.
Welcome back. The Trump administration boosting American coal production to bring back U.S. energy dominance. The Department of Energy delaying retirement of most coal-powered plants to help deliver the massive amount of energy required to power data centers and AI and nuclear power. Surging household electricity demands also. Joining me now is Energy Secretary Christopher Wright. Secretary, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. I know you've got some breaking news for us this morning. Tell us.
Yes, Maria, we're announcing today expanded programs to help the American coal industry. And we're helping it just because for years it's been under assault. It was out of fashion with the Chardonnay set in San Francisco, Boulder, Colorado, and New York City, where I just was at Climate Week. But it's critical to America's industrial might, not just for electricity, as you mentioned. It's our third largest source of electricity after natural gas and nuclear. But we also use it. It's the backbone of steel production. It's critical for cement production. Coal just makes the world go round, and they've tried to strangle it, particularly the Biden administration, starting with the Obama administration. But we need the coal industry. We're stopping the strangulation. We're going to provide some funding to upgrade the existing coal plants, keep them open, even add some pollution control so they run cleaner and better. But coal's got a long future. As long as in the lives of anyone alive today, let's stop pretending it's going away, or stop wishing it was going away. It's critical to our country.
So the Department of Energy announcing a $625 million investment to expand and reinvigorate the industry and try to boost energy production to support communities that have these coal plants. How do you break it down in terms of coal versus oil and gas versus other energy forms, nuclear, in terms of the breakout and what's most relevant, what's most needed in this boom in AI and data centers?
So, of course, we're going to let the private marketplace, investors and capital deployers decide exactly what they're going to build. We're just going to assist some of those efforts and stop with the heavy hands on the scale that we're only going to permit wind and solar, as the Biden administration did. We saw where that would lead, more expensive electricity. President Trump got elected to bring back common sense. And look, coal is a huge part of our electricity grid today. We're going to stop closing all the coal plants that this Biden administration and so many Democratic governors across our country have decided they should just shut those things down. That's just such a losing strategy that drives up electricity prices, prevents us from leading in AI. So we're going to keep these coal plants open that have a long way to go. We're going to remove some of these burdensome regulations or even outright bans from exporting coal out of our country. Coal is by far and away the world's largest source of electricity and will be for decades to come. In fact, to put it in context, Maria, wind, solar, and batteries, 2.6% of total global energy. Coal is 28%, more than 10 times bigger than wind, solar, and batteries put together. It's just a backbone of our planet. And we have awesome coal reserves in the United States. We're going to export more of that coal. We're going to use it for American industry, particularly as we reindustrialize. And it's going to continue to provide 15, 16% of our electricity and enable us to reindustrialize and win the AI race.
Yeah, and you've been talking about coal for months and trying to support the industry for months. Let me get your take on this easing of regulation and the permitting. Are you codifying this permitting so that it is in the law beyond your term, beyond President Trump's term? I mean, these are long-term projects. I bring this up a lot because the likes of these large oil companies that are putting huge amounts of money in the ground for years and years, looking ahead to huge projects, they need to know that those laws are going to be there, that things will run fast and the permitting gets done. I know the Big Beautiful Bill had some of that. Is that where the codifying of this permitting is?
Well, I think there'll be more coming. There's growing bipartisan consensus around permitting reform. I think the Democrats realize you can't have a great American future if you can't build anything in America. So I think you will see bipartisan legislation on permitting reform. I'm excited about that. But you'll see a lot of changes in EPA rules, that were codified that just didn't make sense, that are being challenged by this administration. I think you'll see some rule changes. You'll see legal challenges on those rule changes. And I think you'll see us prevail on those legal challenges. So yes, our plan is to leave behind permanently better structure.
And of course, you mentioned the demand, which is only getting higher and higher. BP's latest energy outlook is predicting that global oil demand will grow until at least 2030. That's 5 years later than last year's forecast. The company predicting natural gas demand also will grow 20% by the year 2040. Secretary, your outlook on oil and natural gas right now in terms of demand as a result of this AI boom, are you expecting to this just get incrementally higher and higher in terms of the demand around AI?
Yes, of course, AI is going to drive tremendous growth in American electricity demand. But electricity is just one sector of the energy economy. Everything from transportation, from plastics, from manufacturing, everything we do requires hydrocarbons. BP predicted peak oil demand when COVID hit. We've seen the peak. It's going to be a plateau and a decline from here. Of course, demand for oil has grown 5 million barrels a day since that projection. So we don't see any end in sight to the growth in demand for oil. We get 1 billion people living highly energized lives and 7 billion people wanting to live highly energized lives. I don't see where people come from that predict these relatively soon peaks in demand for some form of energy. It's just not in the data.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And particularly now, when we are looking at this pivot in terms of AI and this need for data centers, President Trump put countries with these green agendas on notice while he was at the United Nations General Assembly last week. Here's a bit of that. Watch.
This climate change, it's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. The primary effect of these brutal green energy policies has not been to help the environment, but to redistribute manufacturing and industrial activity from developed countries that follow the insane rules that are put down to polluting countries that break the rules and are making a fortune.
Secretary, you say it's even worse than that net zero race is actually benefiting China, our number one adversary.
Yeah, the main impacts of net zero in the countries that have pursued it, which is the wealthy world, right? What has the results been? Higher energy prices, as the president mentioned there, deindustrialization. Europe has just exported its industry to China, into Asia. U.S. did that for a while too. And reduced access to energy for people that want to better their lives. Like nothing good has come out of net zero 2050, but yet it's been unfashionable to call it out. God bless the president for calling a spade and calling it a con job. $5 trillion to get 2.5% of energy from wind, solar, and batteries. What else would you call that?
That's incredible. I mean, look, you all have been so focused on this, and it is the important moment in time, certainly with technology. Secretary, it's great to talk with you. The president certainly has assembled an incredible team around his goal of tapping into our energy capacity. Thank you, Secretary.
Thanks, Maria.
All right, good to see you, Christopher Wright. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
All right, we're going to go to a video. We're going to go to another video about Comey potentially, I think there's going to be some more charges. I'm not sure against Comey or against others. This is on Fox Business. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc is going to help with your immune system and your brain function. Super important. Vitamin C and magnesium helps with your skin, your immune system, and your brain function. Stack them together to get the max benefit. It's really important to protect your neurons, especially since the aftershock of 2020. You're going to know people, approximately 30%, that are 40 years of age or older, that are going to get early onset of dementia if they don't start protecting their neurons. It's really important. Now, they're going to, out of that 30%, 75% of them is due to either microbleeding, cerebral microbleeding, or microclots, microstrokes. Now, another 24.5% or so, maybe a little bit more than that, is going to be due to amyloidosis, buildup of plaque, folded proteins not properly being cleared. And another less than 1% will be due to prion disease. Now you need to really pay attention to what I'm saying here. 3 out of 10 people that are age 40 or older within the next 5 years is going to get early onset of dementia because of the aftershock. Now you're going to have to start preparing for it.
First of the Obama-era officials indicted for charges stemming from the Russiagate hoax and the investigation. He's facing 2 counts, lying to Congress and obstruction of justice. But former House Intelligence Committee Chairman and current Trump Media CEO Devin Nunes tells me it's entirely possible more charges are coming for Comey and more former Intel officials. Watch.
Comey has long been a liar, a leaker. He's dishonest. He ruined the FBI. He will be lucky if there is not a grand conspiracy charge brought, which is really what should be brought against probably about 24 characters in the United States over the last 7-8 years.
Should there be more charges against Jim Comey?
Very specific, and it's over whether or not he lied on this one part. The larger part is whether or not you can bring a kind of grand conspiracy case. And, people talk about, there's the law, which is, lying to Congress, lying to the FBI, but there's also a term in there called misleading. And what a lot of these guys did is they made up things using intelligence that didn't exist, but acted like they knew something that actually wasn't there. And they lied and misled the American people. The only intelligence that they had is that the Russians were very well aware of Clinton's plan. And they actually not only thought Clinton was going to win, but likely preferred that she would win. So going back to the cover-up of her missing emails, that, by the way, are still missing, they all got involved in this plan. They all got the FBI exercise.
President Trump was asked about the investigation on Friday. He did not mince words on just what he thinks of Comey.
Justice, or is it about revenge?
It's about justice, really. It's not revenge. It's also about the fact that you can't let this go on. They are sick, radical left people, and they can't get away with it. And Comey was one of the people. He wasn't the biggest, but he's a dirty cop. He's always been a dirty cop. Everybody knew it.
Yeah, the question now is, will we see a bigger charge here, Liz Peek? You heard what Devin Nunes said, and I think the whole crux of this idea is the fact that they misled the court, they misled the American people. Is that part of a grander conspiracy that they tried to play against President Trump? That's what Lindsey Graham said, as well as Devin Nunes. And if we have the court proving that there is a larger grand conspiracy here, and that's the reason that they also, by the way, raided Mar-a-Lago to get the report on what they did for Russia collusion, that's what you've got coming out now. That's what people are talking about. Devin Nunes, and here's Lindsey Graham, who at the time was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee when they perpetrated this on Trump. Watch this.
He's presumed innocent until proven otherwise. If I'm the Department of Justice, I better get my best lawyers on the field, because Patrick Fitzgerald, Comey's lawyer, is a great lawyer. But the idea he leaked classified information to create a narrative politically, I think that's a strong case. But there's so much else. In 2016, Comey received a memo from the intelligence community, an investigative lead, suggesting that it was Hillary Clinton's campaign who signed off on the plan to link Trump to Russia to avoid her problems. Now, the question is, did they ever take that allegation seriously? He told me that doesn't ring a bell when I asked him in 2020. Can you imagine the Republican candidate for president that you got a memo from the CIA saying it may be his opponent who's starting this line of inquiry, and the FBI did nothing about it? So Patel's going to tell me whether or not they opened up an investigation. So every time there was some exculpatory information, the court never heard about it.
Yeah.
Every person who signed the Carter Page warrant said, if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have signed it. Comey knew then what we all know now and ignored it. I believe he withheld exculpatory information from the court because he wanted Trump to be found guilty. The memo from the Intel Committee in September 2016 was addressed to Comey, suggesting Hillary Clinton was behind this, and a copy went to Strzok. Did they take it seriously? I want to know that answer to that question.
So Liz Peek, weigh in here, because we know that John Brennan knew that Hillary Clinton was putting together this whole fantasy of Trump colluding with Russia. He was in that Oval Office meeting at the end of 2016 or early 2017, and he wrote his little notes there. We have a picture of it, and we have the memo of the notes that basically told all of them, Hillary Clinton, and the Russians are aware that Hillary Clinton is coming up with a story that Trump is somehow tied to Russia as a way to hide her own email scandal.
Yeah, Maria, there's no question that James Comey was part and parcel of a grand conspiracy, basically to, I would say, destabilize the Trump presidency, to put it under pressure from day one, because the American people were led to believe that he was a tool of Vladimir Putin. And sadly, you continue to hear that charge raised over and over again. They did a great job of smearing this government. And we spent, 2-3 years through the courts, through various kinds of investigations, trying to prove that Vladimir Putin had organized and run the election that elected Donald Trump, when in fact just the opposite was true. He was gunning for Hillary Clinton to become president. So I think anything they can throw at James Comey is too little. I think he was basically the head of all of this. On the other hand, they better be sure it sticks. They better be sure it's narrow enough that they can convict this guy, because to go through all this and to go back in time to bring these charges, and Lindsey Graham is totally right. He's a slippery guy. He's got good lawyers. This better be solid, and I sure hope it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the point. It was a grand conspiracy to take down Trump, and it goes on. You've got a timeline here. Even through the raid at Mar-a-Lago, where they were looking for any information that he may have taken about the Russia collusion so that they could destroy it.
Gusto is the best choice for small business payroll. It's fast.
Okay, we're going to go to the Michigan church burning and shooting that happened yesterday. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver toothpaste. This will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, help with your gum line, reduce inflammation at the gum line, and improve your oral cavity and neutralize, especially what's happening in the fall and the winter this season. Really important to get a few tubes of this toothpaste. Be prepared. This is the best toothpaste that you're going to get. You can't get anything better than this. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and be prepared for the fall and the winter. You're going to need it. Resveratrol will help to boost up your energy levels. It soaks up free radicals, improves the health of your mitochondria, helps with youthful gene expression, and helps to get rid of cells that are in senescence. Really important as part of an anti-aging protocol. Now, when you slow down aging and you improve your immune system, guess what? You'll be able to weather the storm in the fall and the winter much better. Also, if you're 40 years of age or older, get the vitamin B complex. This will help with your energy levels. The first 4 B vitamins helps with the electron transport chain to build more ATP in your cell. And when you have more ATP, you have more energy, you'll have more vitality, you'll have a revved up cellular metabolism. Super important. And it has vitamin B12, which is going to help to protect your neurons. And like I said, you better start protecting your neurons now. Olive leaf extract, dual purpose, brings down systemic inflammation and helps your lipid profile. By helping the lipid profile, it's going to help to bring down the LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. That means that you're going to reduce plaque formation. When you reduce inflammation at your vascular level, you're reducing the chances of plaque formation because it's through free radicals and inflammation that leads to plaque formation. And when you bring down systemically inflammation, you're helping your immune system. Chronic inflammation, which is very common in the United States, is immunosuppressive. When you bring that down, you're actually boosting up your immune system. So go to my store and get the olive leaf extract and be prepared for the fall and winter. Super important. And if you take this regularly, you're going to get the benefits of slowing down the aging process. Please go to my store, get the olive leaf extract to help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. Get the vitamin B complex to boost up those energy levels, protect your neurons, and rev up your metabolism. And resveratrol for the youthful gene expression. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. And I'm really sure that free gift you're going to need in the fall and winter to reduce the severity. Trust me on this.
Well, this morning, houses of worship on alert after a gunman rammed his car into a packed church in Michigan, shooting at the worshipers and then setting the building on fire.
So these 4 are dead in the attack, and law enforcement feared that the death toll could grow.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt joins us now to react from the White House. Caroline, we all watched this in horror yesterday. Is there anything that you've been briefed with that could move this story forward to find out what the motive might have been?
Well, first of all, I want to express our sincere condolences to the victims and their families and all of the members of this church who were gathering on a Sunday in the United States of America to worship Jesus Christ. And a crazed gunman rammed his truck into the church and started firing at these innocent Americans. And our hearts break. The president was very quick to put out a statement completely condemning this and assuring the American people that the FBI is on the scene. And I spoke with our FBI director, Kash Patel, bright and early this morning. He assured me and the American public that the FBI is currently executing multiple search warrants at the residences and the family homes of this perpetrator to try to get to the bottom of why he would commit such an act of evil. And the FBI is working with both state and local law enforcement, providing the full support of the federal government. And I just want to commend state and local law enforcement for their swift and incredible response. Local police officers were on the ground of this scene within minutes and neutralized this shooter, no doubt saving lives. And they should be commended. Our police officers are heroes, and this president will always respect them and support them.
They definitely were. They were there in 32 seconds, Caroline. What did the FBI director tell you about the shooter? What do we know?
What we know at this point in time is that he was a member of this Michigan community, that he is a veteran of our United States Armed Forces. He serves in the United States Marine Corps in Iraq. His family is cooperating with the FBI, and so they are currently trying to dig in and get to the bottom of why he committed this heinous act of violence. It's unfathomable. And as the president rightfully put in his Truth Social yesterday, this appears to be yet another targeted attack on Christians. And the Trump administration is fully committed to not only investigating these crimes, but prosecuting them to the fullest extent of the law, but also working very hard to prevent them, to see if there's red flags. The FBI is going to treat those as public safety emergencies and investigate them to try to prevent such violence from taking place in our country.
You know, Caroline, we had the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We had the attempted assassination on ICE officers in my hometown of Dallas. And you just obviously just referred to the church. Did this suspect leave any indication that he was trying to target people? More than the obvious of him doing it to a church on a Sunday.
Well, from what I understand, based on my conversations with the FBI director, all they know right now is this was an individual who hated people of the Mormon faith. And they are trying to understand more about this, how premeditated it was, how much planning went into it, whether he left a note. All of those questions have yet to be answered, but certainly will be answered by the FBI. I think the American people in your audience can be assured. Look at the great work that the FBI did in light of, or in the hours and days following the assassination, on Charlie Kirk's life. That was a successful investigation, and that investigation continues. And that assassin was, of course, being held accountable in the court of law now.
At least two big meetings for the president today. One is going to be with the Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, at which time I understand they were setting out a framework to end the Israeli-Hamas war, but a comprehensive peace for the region. I understand, too, I have a pretty good source that says Bibi's on board. So do you expect there's going to be a press opportunity afterwards? I get it. I know you have sources working very close with Hamas, not with them, but they have contacts directly there. How close is Bibi to saying yes? How close to Hamas is saying yes? How they let you know?
Very close. It is going to be a very busy day here at the White House. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be arriving just behind me in just a few hours to meet with the president and hopefully finalize this peace plan. President Trump and his incredible team have been working so hard since he was inaugurated in January and inherited this mess from the previous Biden administration. And the president met with our Arab partners and allies in New York City when he was at UNGA to hear them out and understand their concerns. The administration has been in both direct and indirect talks with Hamas throughout this entire process as well. And of course, the president is in constant communication with our friend and ally, Prime Minister Netanyahu. And nobody knows better than President Trump to reach a good deal, a reasonable deal for both sides. Both sides have to give up a little bit and might leave the table a little bit unhappy, but that's ultimately how we are going to end this conflict. It must end at the negotiating table. The president has made it very clear. He wants to see the killing end. He wants all of the hostages released. And that's why Special Envoy Witkoff drafted up this very detailed and comprehensive 21-point plan and has proposed it to both sides. So we hope that both sides agree. That's the president's expectation. That is his hope, and he'd love to see this conflict finally come to an end and to ensure a lasting peace in the Middle East, just like he did in his first term.
Has Hamas responded to the proposal? If Bibi's on board, we know Donald Trump is. What about Hamas?
Well, those discussions will continue to take place today. I know the president will be speaking to our friends in Qatar who have served as incredible intermediaries between the United States and Hamas, and we've had some direct talks with them as well. So that's always kind of the crunch point, right? We get everyone to agree, and then Hamas has to agree as well. And so, again, this is why we've drafted a 21-point, incredibly detailed plan that we know can be and must be agreeable to both sides. The president wants to see to that.
So, Caroline, I know the president is supposed to be with top congressional leaders today. I've heard that they want more funding for illegals, NPR funding, USAID. That seems like some things that are dead on arrival coming to the White House. What can you tell us?
Let me be very clear about the president and the White House's position. All we are asking for is a common sense, clean funding resolution, a continuing resolution to keep the government open. This is a bill that keeps the government funded at the exact same levels as today, just adjusted for inflation. So there is zero good reason for the Democrats to vote against this, especially when the Democrats have voted for this 13 previous times as recently as March. And so this is the reasonable and common sense thing to do. The president is giving Democrat leadership one last chance to be reasonable, to come to the White House today to try to talk about this. And now is not the time to try to get political points against Donald Trump. Now is the time to do right by the American people and keep the government funded. Our most vulnerable in our society and our country will be impacted by a government shutdown. Everybody knows this, and that's why Republicans and the president want to keep the government open, and we welcome Democrats to join us in that effort.
So, Caroline, the president usually comes in with leverage, or he always has something, whether it's a country or it's a group. So is he having this meeting just to hear them say, I want this, and he's going to in turn come back and say, I'm not giving it to you, I had the meeting, and be done with it? Like, what could he give? For example, could he agree not to have any more rescission packages for 6 months? Could he agree to visit some of these things if they fund for the next few weeks? Can you give me an idea of any give and take that might be on the table?
Well, look, Brian, the leverage is in the president's hands because the overwhelming majority of the American public wants to keep the government open. I mean, it's not even close. Democrats and Republicans, independents across the country want the government funded because they want our military and our troops to be paid. They want TSA agents and Border Patrol to be paid. They want food assistance programs for women and children in impoverished communities to continue going out the door. All of that will come to an end if Democrats vote against this clean CR that Republicans are proposing. And might I just add, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are on the record multiple times in their past political lives stating that they too believe a government shutdown is bad. In fact, I quote, Chuck Schumer just last year in 2024 said, a shutdown would mean chaos and pain and needless heartache for the American people. Well, we hope that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats won't cause chaos and pain and heartache. We want our country to continue to be funded. We want our government to be open so we can continue doing the business of the American people.
Caroline, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah,
Thanks, Caroline.
yeah. Besides that, not much happening at the White House today.
Very busy today.
One even more.
I personally think that the government needs to shut down for a little while. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, it's dysfunctional to begin with. So if you shut it down, I guess maybe you'd have less dysfunctionality. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the deodorants. The deodorants are dual purpose. It's going to be able to detoxify your body and you use it as a daily deodorant. This is really important. And it's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. It has no aluminum and no baking soda. So with these very high quality, all natural ingredients, you're going to be able to detoxify your body and you're using it as a deodorant too. It's for males and females, very high quality. You can get it in citrus or also in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. Get a few bars for your household and detoxify your body. And when you're detoxifying your body regularly, you're helping your immune system and your endocrine system. Super important. Now let's also talk about zeolite. Zeolite helps to detoxify your body too. It binds to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals and allows you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. You can use this every day. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue and drink filtered water. Do that daily, and you're going to improve your endocrine system, your immune system, your kidneys, your liver, your brain function. even your vascular system, your bladder. It's really important to detoxify your body regularly. Also, make sure you drink filtered water, stay away from processed foods, and clean your environment in your home. Take a look at the cleaning solutions, paints, even pesticides that you may have in your garage or in your basement. And if you need them, make sure you put them in a double layered container. Maybe wrap them up in a garbage bag and then put them in a sealed container, something like that. But it's really important to improve your air quality in your home, especially from chemicals that you may need regularly for your household. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the zeolite. It'll bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals, and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. So a great stack would be to get the deodorant and get the zeolite. The more often you detoxify your body, the better off your body will perform. So please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, let's talk about Antifa here. Antifa gears up for massive protest. This is from Fox.
New York 811 presents Don't Dig Up a Lawsuit. When you run the job in New York City and Long Island, time is money. But if you don't contact...
And meanwhile, in Portland, Antifa is gearing up for a massive protest tonight at the ICE facility there. A flyer is circulating online urging people to rally against President Trump's order that deploys troops to the city to protect ICE facilities against violent rioters. Christina Coleman is live with the latest. Hi, Christina.
Hi, Tommy. Yes, more protests are expected tonight in Portland after the president announced he plans to send federal troops there. Yesterday on Truth Social, the president wrote, at the request of Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, I am directing Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. We have the full screen there that President Trump put out. There you go. So he said, at the request of Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, I'm directing Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to provide all necessary troops to protect war-ravaged Portland and any of our ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. I am also authorizing full force if necessary. Now, this announcement got swift pushback from some of Oregon's Democratic leaders. Take a listen.
The president will not find lawlessness or violence here. If President Trump came to Portland today, what he would find is people riding their bikes, playing sports, enjoying the sunshine.
It's pretty outrageous to see what the president is saying about Portland. It is all based on lies. This is not...
Let's face it, Portland is full of a bunch of fucking ultra liberals. They're crazy. They're part of they are part of a group that is destroying America. They're eroding God, country, and family. And conservatives need to push back and clean up the city. And Trump is doing exactly what he needs to do. Now think about it. As we're getting closer to World Soccer and getting closer to the Olympics and the midterm elections, don't you think that Antifa and other crazy ultra left movements are going to create havoc in the inner cities to try to create disruption under the Trump administration? Of course they are. So Trump knows this and he's trying to nip it at the bud. He's doing exactly what he needs to do. Conservatives in the United States need to start pushing back on the ultra-lib agenda. Because the ultra-lib agenda is nothing but Marxism, Maoism, communism. I mean, look at what's happening in New York. It's a shithole now. You know why? Because it was ran into the ground by de Blasio. You have a bunch of liberals running the town, want to raise the prices of everything because of their socialistic programs. And then when Mamdani gets in, it's probably going to get even worse. No, conservatives need to push back. Trump is doing exactly what he needs to do in a shithole area like Portland.
War-ravaged cities. It's pretty outrageous that this gross abuse of power, calling in the military.
But
we wouldn't need a president to call in the military if these ultra-liberals were running their town properly. But because they're out of control, we have to. The liberals, the ultra-liberals, caused this problem. They ran their city into the ground, and there's no law and order. Now, you know what's interesting about Marxism? With all these socialists that are pushing Marxism? Karl Marx was lazy. He didn't even bathe. His mother had to tell him to bathe at least once a week. He had a tendency to be lazy. And then there was this hate of capitalism. But you have a lot of ultra-liberals pushing Marxism. Try to learn a little bit about the real life of Karl Marx. And then you'll start to realize, well, wait a minute here. That's like a Krusty from Portland, Oregon. You remember during Occupy movement? You remember like during the Lehman crash and then the whole Occupy movement? And you had these Krusties running around in New York. They were from Seattle. And they didn't bathe. They looked crusty. We called them Krusties. All right? And they lived on the streets. And they were roaming around in Zuccotti Park until it was eventually they were forced to decamp. And I'm sure that they were being supported by some sort of organization. It had to be. But the thing is that they took over the town. They took over New York City through this whole Occupy movement. And it was worldwide. The whole Occupy movement even was in London and throughout the country. But these are the types of people that we're dealing with in Portland. It's the same type. It's the Krusties. They're very much like a Karl Marx.
Within the Trump administration clearly feel differently. Portland is one of a number of cities nationwide where there's been ongoing protests against the president's crackdown on illegal immigration. And some of those demonstrations have turned very violent with clashes between anti-ICE rioters and federal agents. There's been a dramatic rise in assaults against ICE agents nationwide compared to the same time last year. Democratic lawmakers from Oregon think adding more troops to the mix is going to make the situation worse.
Trump is sending troops to Portland with the goal of, quote, doing a number on the city. And we know what this means. He wants to stoke fear and chaos and trigger violent interactions and riots to justify expanded authoritarian control. Let's not take the bait. Portland is peaceful and strong, and we will take care of each other.
Well, we'll see how things play out tonight. Again, more protests are planned for
peaceful. Bunch of drug addicts, homelessness, Krusties. Land of the ultra-liberal. The dream of Karl Marx.
at the ICE facility in Portland this evening. Tommy?
Christina Coleman, thank you so much. I'm going to open it out to the table now to have a little discussion about, let's talk about Portland first, Joey, because we just came off of that, and I was just stunned by those leaders in Portland. We saw it yesterday too. Everything's fine here. We don't need help. You're going to come and you're going to cause the problem. It's the same thing that Mayor Karen Bass and Governor Gavin Newsom said in California after people were rioting for days, lighting things on fire, causing destruction of businesses. But yet again, you have the leaders that say, we don't want help, don't come here, you will cause the problem. And I'm just wondering, to continue our discussion with you yesterday, at what point do the citizens of Portland say, no, we're kind of sick of being antagonized by Antifa and all of this ruckus, and we would like some law and order?
Yeah, I think what they're trying to do is they're kind of glossing over the issue. So Trump is sending support there to help with the ICE operations in the ICE facilities there, which are currently under some sort of siege protest. There's a report, I didn't hear if Christina got to it, that potentially some of these protesters are found with guns on their person. And so Trump is specifically sending support for these ICE operations. I think what they're doing is they're kind of ignoring the ICE part and saying, oh, but our city's not, and we don't have CHOP or whatever it was, Jazz again. So maybe their crime statistics are down a tick, but that's not why they're going there. Unfortunately, they're not even getting to go there to help make the city safe. They're going there to protect federal agents enacting federal law who are essentially under attack, and apparently the local law enforcement is not allowed to help them.
But Anita, it's still an incredible deterrent, because when you know that these facilities are going to be fortified, they're going to have extra help, I would think that that would send a loud and clear message to Antifa and the rest of these folks out there that want to cause anarchy and chaos. Hey, you come and you try to do this, it's not going to be so easy as the last time you tried to come and do this.
Well, you would think so. You would hope so. But, that remains to be seen, because, we're seeing these pictures day after day. And let me just say, these are not protests. These are not people carrying signs and chanting and making their voices heard. This is what they're doing. I'm going to read from the federal charging document. In one of the most serious ones, federal officers allege a protester used the pointed end of a protest sign wooden handle to attack the head of a U.S. Border Patrol officer who was trying to make an arrest.
I'm telling you, these people don't like capitalism. They want to destroy law and order. They want to destroy the country, destroy God, and destroy family unit. These people are dangerous, and this is like a CCP takeover. It's like a cultural revolution to try to destroy capitalism. But this goes to the heart of Marxism. Marxism didn't like capitalism, but he wanted to sit at home, not take a shower, and spend his mother's money, and not work, and be an intellectual, be a philosopher. Very similar to these, like, I'm an artist types. I'm an artist, I don't work, I'm an artist. I'm a philosopher. These people are a problem. Karl Marx wanted to destroy capitalism. And you have these young dipshits that buy into it, and it gets even worse. Many of the people that are on the street with this Antifa, they didn't go to good schools. They didn't go to the Ivy League, the far majority of them. Now, the ones that are going to the Ivy League and Ivy League Plus, they're going to be your mayors and your senators one day. Look at Mayor Wu in Boston, double Harvard College and Harvard Law. She's not a dumb girl, but she's a fucking Marxist.
The incident cut the officer's ear. Another protester threw a foot-long knife at an approaching officer during a June protest. So this is not protesting. These are attacks on federal officers. Let's call it what it is.
And there needs to be extra protection.
It's beyond that. It's beyond just attacks on ICE officers. That's the surface level. This is an attack on capitalism. This is an attack on law and order. This is an attack on God, country, and family. People need to wake up here. Why are they supposedly protesting and attacking the ICE officers? Because ICE is following the law and getting rid of the illegals. Now, why would they want illegals in the country? Destroy the border so you don't have a country. Because the two things that you need to have a country: controlling of your currency and your borders. Secondly, with having illegal immigrants here, then you have a slave labor force brought to you by the Democratic Party. The Democrats have never moved away from slavery. I mean, just wake up. Just stop pretending that they're for the rights of the minorities. They're not. They're not. They want to have illegal immigration here, so there is a population that you can take advantage of with low labor cost. It's a modern day slavery. Third, when you move these individuals in sanctuary cities, they're almost always Democrat cities, city ran, and they need the money for their public schools. Why? Because the population is going down. People aren't having kids. Why? Because you have in these liberal towns the demonization of creation of family. They'd rather kill 65 million fetuses in the womb since the 1970s, more than 65 million, than to actually have family creation. Now, okay, so they're not for family. They want to destroy the country and have the open borders. They have this big flow of illegal immigrants that are coming in, and then they'll force the amnesty to maintain their number of seats in Congress because it's based on population. Now, if New York has a lot of electoral seats. Same thing with California. Now, why are you constantly hearing California and New York in the news? California, New York, California, New York when it comes to this ultra-liberal horseshit? Because they're having a hemorrhaging of their population and moving out of the state. Some of them are moving to Texas. But the point here is that New York and California are hemorrhaging a population. So over time, they're going to lose the number of seats, especially during the next census, which is in 2030. Maybe even earlier if Trump pushes the new census, because the Democratic Party spiced up the numbers with the illegal immigrants. And the far majority of these illegal immigrants are not asylum seekers, real asylum seekers, where they're leaving some sort of war-torn area, or they're going to be killed because of some sort of ethnic cleansing. The far majority are not that. So the Democratic Party, the party of the ultra-liberal, the party of Karl Marx, the party of communism and slavery, want to just keep on having that flow in. Don't do anything about it. Don't send them back home. We're going to send out Antifa and stop you. And then when you fight back, we're going to demonize your administration, Orange Man, because Orange Man's always bad. No, Karl Marx is always bad. And we have a population that's just not educated enough. I have not heard yet in the modern day parlance in the last 2-3 months about what's going on in the inner cities and how it's related to Karl Marx. But it is. And unfortunately, even the conservative news, the newscasters, the anchors, they're just not that bright.
Extra protection for those officers. We spoke to Tom Holman yesterday, Jason, and he said President Trump has made it so clear to me and to my agents that they will be protected.
Keep you out there in the cold and the dust. We're going to make sure you have the protection that you need and you deserve. And I think that, and I would hope that the folks in Portland who are not a member of Antifa or any of this, regardless of their views on immigration, I would hope that they would want these agents who are oftentimes members of their own community to be safe and protected.
The far majority of the people from Portland, Oregon are liberal or ultra-liberal. Not left to center. Liberal or ultra-liberal. Wake up. Wake up. Now, if we're going to fall into the same trap as, let's say, France and the UK, and we're going to have some sort of doom loop because of a deficit, growing deficits and growing debt. We're going to start needing to come to the realization that the social programs that we have, we can't afford. We have to end the liberalism. We have to end the socialism because we can't afford it. And then when you start pulling away from that, when you start pulling away those social programs, they're going to have a shit fit. And there's going to be more Antifa. Now, I'm a capitalist. I hate Karl Marx, but I also realize that uber wealthy individuals in the tune of billions have political power that the average individual in the United States doesn't have, and that you need to truncate that. And you truncate it by having laws put into place that curtails K Street, and that you tax the uber wealthy 75% of their wealth. They'll still be multi-billionaires. $400 billion, you'll still be able, after 75% tax, you'll still be rich. Don't worry about it. So there's a pragmatism that needs to take hold so we can pay down the debt, get back to budgets, and then over a 25-year period, it will create an amazing amount of prosperity in the United States that will lead to the ability to offer programs, social programs to help the needy. But we can't do it now. We can't do it now. Now, there are different people that are getting closer and closer to retirement, so you can't just cut them off. You got to provide. So the ones that are retired already, they get their benefits. The ones that are going to retire within the next 5 years, they get their benefits. The ones that retire outside of that 5 years, so that will retire, let's say, in 6 to 10 years, they get less benefits, maybe 80% or 75%. And then the ones that are going to retire in 11 to 15 years, they get even less benefits, maybe only 50%. And you just keep on titrating this down to the point where there is a generation that will be born that gets no benefits. And that way you have a long 50-year plan of bringing down the debt, getting the budget balanced, and you're not getting to that point where you're in a doom loop and fall in the same trap as England and France. Because remember, your life is not as important as the Constitution. My life is not as important as the Constitution. Your kid's life isn't as important as the Constitution. The president isn't as important as the Constitution. Nothing is more important than the Constitution. Now, why does Dr. Paul Cottrell say that? Because it is through that document that will allow for future generations to have freedom. We will lose that freedom if we are not stewards of our economic system. If we aren't good stewards of our economic system, we will lose that. So we need to wake up and realize that the baby boomers and the national security state has brought this country to a point where we can't afford the social programs anymore. So we have to truncate the national security state, reduce its power, and we're going to have to start titrating social programs and make it very clear. Make it very clear that that generation that started to come into adulthood in the 60s, they started this and led our country down a path where it was an erosion of God, country, and family, and it created a huge debt for future generations. And make it very clear in the history books that there was a point, there was an inflection point during the Vietnam era, during these 1960s, where the United States went off the track and went in the wrong direction. led by the baby boomers. Now we're going to have to just bite the bullet, fix it, but make sure that in the history books that the baby boomers realize what they did wrong. They didn't help this country. They made it worse.
Yeah, look, President Trump is doing exactly the right thing. He's protecting law-abiding citizens and federal assets. And these Democratic leaders who try to put this out there, oh, it's safe and we're all protected. Great. Then buy these guys some pizza and just say, hey, you're wasting your time here. But that's probably not what's going to happen tonight. They have foreshadowed that there's going to be violence and attacks, and nobody should have to put up with that. This is the United States of America. We're going to protect Americans and we're going to protect our law enforcement. That's the right message. That's exactly what we need to do. And that's why President Trump is the most popular president we've ever had.
Antifa is so used to getting away with everything in these deep blue cities, but not anymore. Not on President Trump's watch.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it.
I personally think that Donald Trump should use the military in Portland, Oregon, and kick the shit out of Antifa. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the cleanse. This is 30 parts per million, or max 35, which is 35 parts per million. This is part of my anti-aging protocol. I've been doing this for over 5 years. Take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20-30 seconds, and then swallow it. What this will do is improve your oral cavity, your oral pharynx, help with your mucosal lining, and help with the health of your epithelial cells. When you do that, you're boosting up your immune system. If you're not feeling well, or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day. Do the same thing. Swish in your mouth, gargle 20-30 seconds or so, and then swallow it. Once everything is better, then go back to your maintenance dose of a teaspoon a day. But it's really important to be prepared because the fall and the winter is going to be problematic in the United States. And you're going to need to take my advice. Get the Max 35 or the Cleanse. The Cleanse is 30 parts per million at a different price point. Max 35 is 35 parts per million. Take it every day. Super important. Now, if you're 40 years of age or older, it's harder for you to build muscle. If you take this supplement that's on my store and you do some resistance training and drink it with filtered water, this will help with the gene expression to build muscle and maintain muscle and help with the health of your mitochondria. This has flavonoids, polyphenols, and lignans to help you with the gene expression to build muscle. This stacks well with Gladiator Barley. You don't have to take it with Gladiator Barley, but it's really important to take if you're 40 years of age or older to help you build muscle. Super important. And when you're building that muscle, not only should you be building muscle for, the front part of your core and your arms and your legs, but also your back. Back is super important because with back, when you're building muscle in the back and you're focusing on strengthening your back, you're also improving the density of your vertebrae. You're improving your posture and you're improving the lymphatic flow and your vascular flow. And when you're doing that, over time, your body will perform better. Because if you start to hunch over, all right, you're getting poorer flow back to your heart and the lymphatic flow. All right? You need your body to have the proper flow. When you have that, then your body gets into homeostasis easier. And one of the weak spots when people start to get older, especially when they get into their geriatric years, is just that they have poor back muscles. So they injure their back really easily, and then they're not mobile, and then all of a sudden, further problems start to arise. So if you have a strong core, especially your back, that's going to add additional years and vitality to your life. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. Super important. and make sure you build those back muscles. Super important. There's a high correlation to stronger legs and stronger back and longevity. Now, I'm the most accurate person on this subject matter, and comprehensive. Some people say, just take this and then you'll be okay. No, I tell you everything you need, because the human body is highly complex. It has a lot of intricacies with its biochemistry, but there's also these little tricks that I just mentioned with the back muscles that helps you, right? Another trick in terms of building more bone density is to do these calf lifts where you lift your body on your toes. Be on a hard floor, no shoes, and then you're lifting your toes up and down, and you're getting this vibration up through your leg, into your hip, and up through your spine. When you're doing that, you're actually sending a microsignal to build more bone matrix, denser bone. So you do that every day for years, and what's going to happen is you're going to have a stronger hip, stronger legs, and a stronger vertebrae. That's going to be super important for you when you go into your geriatric years. And not only that, when you're doing your calf lifts, you're strengthening the calf muscle, and that's going to have better flow for your blood back to your heart, your venous flow, and lymphatic flow. So it's dual purpose. Little tricks. Do you hear that from Dr. Drew? Do you hear that from Dr. Artis? Do you hear that from Dr. Malone? Do you hear that from anybody else? No. Because a lot of them are just a bunch of celebrity docs. All right. All right, let's listen into Bloomberg while I find another video here.
Well, it depends on who you are. I mean, there are a lot of insurance companies, pension companies that have yield targets, and they have yield bodies that they have to reach. So, locking in a IG credit yield at 4.5%, 5%, is not unattractive for these kind of players, for these kind of yield buyers. That being said, if you are a more flexible investor with more flexibility, you can look across the board. You think that there is better relative value to be found in some of the securitized markets, both agency MBS and non-agency securitized credit.
All right, I'm gonna go to Squawk Box here. They're talking about the survivability of New York through a bad mayor.
Yeah, on the race for New York City mayor yesterday, of course, Eric Adams announcing he's dropping his bid for re-election. Joining us right now is Kathy Wild. She's the president and CEO of the Partnership for New York City. I think under your breath, you'd say you've been wanting this to happen for quite some time. Maybe not under your breath.
Not at all. No, I just think we've been tortured for the last couple of years as the mayor has gone through what is really a tragedy for New York City. On an objective basis, he's done a very good job in terms of his administration pushing through a lot of important things. They have reduced crime. The shooting rates are way down. They have been very successful with sanitation, housing, etc.
So the business community now, but I think where I was going with this is the argument has been that I think you don't like Zoran Mamdani for the most part, and that you'd like to find an alternative. Now that Adams is out, how do you think it really changes the calculus, if at all, for Cuomo's bid?
Well, if you mean in terms of the business community, that's one thing. I think that they're very concerned about Mamdani's policy positions, the things he has focused on in the past, and to some extent in the campaign. He has made an effort since the primary election, since winning the primary election handily, to meet with a lot of business people, and he's provided some reassurance that he's somebody who...
Do you think the business community is more comfortable with him now?
I think it's all over the map. There are some members of the business community that met him and feel that he's a smart guy who will want to be successful, so they're hopeful.
But I think the main point is that it's really up to the voters, not the business community. We still live in a democracy.
Well, so how much of this is a worry, though, about if the New York City partnership is too far out there, saying, you know what, we're not into socialism. We don't like socialism. We don't like this mayor. We don't want him to be the
It's
guy.
not socialism. It's not socialism. It's communism. Hello, hello, hello. It's way more to the left. This is not just typical socialism that he's pushing. It's Marxism. Come on, wake up.
That the city says, well, and this, you hear people say, well, if the real estate guys and the business community don't like him, we like him.
Something must be good, right?
Yeah.
No, absolutely. No, I think it's, I think the idea of the whole thought that money, raising super PAC money, etc., to go after somebody is, I think the public objects to that. I think that backfires. I don't think most of the business community has not spoken out one way or the other on this issue. And I think it's because they are going to go with the will of the voters, and we have to work with whoever is mayor.
But I will tell you, at least privately, the people that I talk to in the business community, almost to a man, to a woman, say they have a particular view, which is that they don't want Mamdani to win. They may maybe a toss up as to Adams or Cuomo or something else, but they sort of have a singular focus about that, and privately are telling each other this is no good, and they want to somehow see if they can affect it, but they don't know how.
Right, and in fact, the way they can affect it is go to the polls and vote, and then there'll be one vote among many.
What do you think, though, between, you still have Sliwa in there?
Yes.
You think that he's going to drop out?
I do not.
You do not?
I don't think so.
So do you think then this changes the dynamic at all? What happened yesterday?
I don't think it, I think what it does is allows us to go back to focusing on the issues, rather than the tactics and the will he or won't he, and the mechanics of if we get everybody out, who can win. But I think that's been unhealthy. I think we ought to be focused on the issues. I mean, the big challenges facing the city are, number one, affordability in general, especially housing and childcare. And that's what we should be talking about, how you're going to solve the problem.
Does Mamdani's solution to that make sense to you? The idea of affordability by saying we're going to do more rent control, extend and expand that?
It's certainly an oversimplification.
Hey, how are you? Taylor found out my Widowmaker was 97% stocked up. If it wasn't for my
It's certainly an oversimplification of what's required. Obviously, rents are a big part of the issue, and he has nuanced his position by saying in order to freeze the rents, I know we have to reduce costs, and he is supporting tax reform, real estate tax reform to reduce costs. So those conversations are going on. Again, I think the solutions that are proposed, the problems that are being addressed, the fact that we're the most expensive city in America, that we're having more and more difficulty with having people being able to afford to live here, attracting young people here. Those are the big issues. It's the how you solve those issues that the candidates disagree.
Do you worry that the people who have the most means will be chased out of the city if Mamdani is there and is successful in some of the things that he wants to put forth? And if you lose that tax base, how do you pay?
Well, I think they're actually being chased out now for a few years. Ever since SALT, we lost the deductibility from federal taxes, of state and local taxes. We're the highest tax city. There's a study that just came out from the Citizens Budget Commission that shows that our share of millionaires is decreasing nationally, while in Florida and Texas are going up.
In terms of the conversation, at least I'm hearing among the business community that are concerned about Mamdani, the focus seems to be on safety and security and the police. What is he going to do with the police?
Yeah.
Is he going to keep Tish? Is he not? Is he going to move money around so that
he could provide a lot of relief if he said, I'm going to keep Jesse Tish as police commissioner, because there's great confidence in her and in her job.
So you hear that?
Yes.
You hear references to this website that refers to raising taxes but not just raising taxes, he says, on white neighborhoods specifically. It's sort of an interesting thing to say that as directly as he does when it comes to sort of, and again, he's referring to neighborhoods, but there's sort of he spells it out as a racial issue to some degree. At least some people see that. And then there's the Bibi Netanyahu stuff about, when he says, that he's going to have him arrested by the NYPD, which is of course completely against federal law. And I think there's a lot of people who are Jewish in this city, irrespective of your views about Israel and this and that, who say that it sends a signal that there's something that there's a anti-Semitic view that's being espoused underneath all of this.
Yeah, and that is the single biggest issue, I think.
You think that is?
Absolutely.
That or the police?
No, I think the anti-Semitic view. New York is a city that has a long history relationship with Israel. Our investors funded the whole startup nation, building of Israel, etc. I think that's a big issue.
So here's the question. To the extent that you guys are now behind Cuomo, what does he actually have to do to win? What do you think that, is there and I don't know if you're saying you're probably not behind Cuomo, but I think you really are.
I'm going to have to vote for Cuomo.
Meaning what do you,
business community?
The business community.
No, I think the business community is very split all over the map. I mean,
I have to vote for
several
Cuomo.
business leaders, one of our vice chairman, Kevin Ryan.
Even the Cuomo.
leader
The
of
problem
tech
is
community, came out saying he was going to work with Mamdani.
The business community is going to have to vote for Cuomo. The problem with Cuomo is that he's corrupt. He had a corrupt administration, and he acts like a mobster. He behind the scenes he acts like a mobster. All right. But the thing is that better than Karl Marx? I mean, Mamdani? So by Adams leaving the race, it gives a fighting chance to Cuomo. So I think most people, when they're at the voter booth in November, they're gonna probably vote for Cuomo. The question is how many of the youth that is affected by the high cost of living in New York and the lack of job opportunities because of AI and a changing of the job market, will they vote in Mamdani? It's a big question. I think the country is split, or not the country. The country's split for sure, but this city is definitely split.
Trying to make sure he gets the best possible results if he's elected. So I don't, business, particularly public corporations, does not participate in local politics in a visible way because you can't win. Your employees their young employees are definitely Mamdani people. Right?
Yeah, see, that's the problem.
The business leaders are not taking that kind of position. In addition, the whole financial industry, which is the largest sector of our economy, can't contribute because of federal regulations that prohibit financial contributions by financial advisors to state and local politicians. So they basically are on the sidelines because they can't donate. So the business community, I think it's unfortunate and that we ought to be trying to fix this, but the business community really is not that engaged on the politics of the issue. They're very worried about the substance of the issues and what a next mayor will want to do, whether it will be productive. But I always say, we're a city of leaders in New York. The mayor is only one of those. We have not only checks and balances in government with the city council, the governor, et cetera, but we have leaders in every sector, in business, in culture, and et cetera. So I don't think who is mayor is ultimately going to determine the fate of New York City. We're going to have to work harder to make sure that that is the case. We're going to have to depend on the support of the governor and others to make sure that is the case. But I think, I don't know what's going to happen in the election, but I don't think that I think New York City has proven that we're highly resilient, that we have survived plenty of less than adequate mayors. We've survived lots of bad public policies. I think we'll be successful moving forward.
You got to look at the arc of this. And the arc is that the apex of New York was probably in the second term of Bloomberg. But because he had 3 terms, that third term, New York was just starting to decline. Then you had de Blasio, it declined much faster. You know, it's like going up a hill, right? Or in a roller coaster. You get to that apex and you're starting to lose momentum, and then all of a sudden it starts to gain momentum and it speeds up. So there's an acceleration. That was the Blasio days. Adams is trying to stabilize it, but there is just the acceleration of liberalism and the cost of living and inflation and all these different social stressors, the crime, the illegal immigration, all these social stressors, even with Adams trying to do the best that he could, it's still causing the city to decline. Yes, did Adams bring in new affordable housing units? Yes, most ever in the history of New York. Did he reduce the crime? Yes, but the crime is still there. You still have lots of illegal immigrant issue in New York. You still have the crime. You still have the lack of God, country, and family within a large part of the society. So if you bring on someone that is super socialistic, like Mamdani, who's way worse than de Blasio, then you're probably going to see a further decline. And then you start to look at like the country, economically, maybe even geopolitically, domestic policy, and many of the historians and the economists are saying, well, wait a minute here, this is kind of like the 1970s. Now, history rhymes. It's not perfect. It's not copy-paste, but it rhymes. And when you have lots of scholars saying, well, wait a minute here, this is like at the mosaic level, like the 1970s, maybe you should pay attention. And if that's the case, what was New York like in the 1970s? It was a shithole. And it further became a shithole during the 80s. So there's a higher probability that the city is going to get worse, not better, under Mamdani. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the clarity factor so you can think as clear-minded as I do, all right? Take it every day. Make sure you drink with filtered water. And what this will do is create the microenvironment for you to have positive neuroplasticity and get those dendritic connections. So your neurons communicate with each other, and the faster you think, the better your memory is predicated on those connections. So you need to increase your positive neuroplasticity. When you do that, you're going to be thinking faster, your memory is going to be improved, you're going to be able to concentrate on the tasks at hand, drink it with filtered water, learn new things, write, talk to people in the real world, create a better microenvironment. And another little tip to create that microenvironment is also to do resistance training, cardio, balancing, and stretching. Now, people would say, why? Well, your brain has cognitive function and motor function. So you want to improve both. So if you're doing the resistance training, you're activating certain types of nerves to contract your muscle. But your cerebellum is being activated for coordination. Balancing helps with that cerebellum coordination. Stretching activates the neurons that are at the ends of your muscle. So you're strengthening those and you're activating that cerebellum, super important. And cardio is going to provide more blood flow to the brain and create a better microenvironment to add for that neuroplasticity. So there is a correlation between positive neuroplasticity and the coupling of learning new things and working out. When you strengthen your body and strengthen your mind in terms of concepts, in terms of learning new things, and you're challenging your brain and challenging your body, you're going to actually improve your overall brain function. They're coupled together. This idea your brain is separate from your muscles, no, they're connected. They're connected. They're literally connected by nerves. But the thing is that when you have this more balanced approach, where you're learning new things, new concepts, learning about subjects that you were not formally trained in, and you're doing certain types of exercises, then you're creating a more holistic being and improving your brain function, cognitive and motor coordination. Super important. They're related. So it's not surprising that when you start getting older and you're not as active because your ATP is less, because your mitochondria isn't as healthy, your bone density is poor, you lose muscle mass, and you just don't move around, you start to see brain function start to decline too. Cognitive function starting to decline too. They're related. This is why I keep on saying it's very important to get that ATP up, improve that mitochondria. And if you approach this in a holistic way, you're going to slow down the aging process. Super important to keep in mind. It's learning and doing with your body and moving your muscles around and being more active. When you couple those together, you're slowing down the aging process. Omega-3 is another supplement super important to take to help with your vascular system. If you have a better vascular system, don't you think you'll probably have a better microenvironment for your brain to allow for that positive neuroplasticity? Yeah. Omega-3 brings down systemic inflammation. Don't you think that if you bring down inflammation at the cerebral level that your neurons will be healthier? Yeah. Omega-3 helps with preventing red blood cells from overclotting. Don't you think that's going to be important for your brain? Yeah. It's really important to take omega-3 for your cardiovascular health, and an added benefit, brain function will improve. Heirloom barley. Detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. Now, if you're detoxifying your body regularly, your endocrine system, your immune system, and your brain function is going to improve. If you're reducing toxins, reducing inflammation, your body is going to be healing and be more protective of its tissues. So if you think about what is part of the aging process, buildup of toxins, increased inflammation, a buildup of free radicals. Well, if you take a substance like heirloom barley every day and you're detoxifying, bringing down inflammation and soaking up those free radicals, don't you think that you'll be slowing down the aging process and improving your brain function, your immune system, and your endocrine system? Come on, say it with me. Yeah. Like I said, there is nobody out there that is as comprehensive on slowing down the aging process and what you need to take to do it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. Stack it with the omega-3. Very powerful cardiovascular stack and brain function stack. And oh, by the way, add clarity factor. Don't you think that's going to help with your brain function? Now, like I said, the 2020 crisis has a lot of different aftershocks. And one of those aftershocks is early onset of dementia. 30% of the people that you know, 40 years of age or older, within the next 5 years, will get it. What are you going to do about it?
Showing up late, on purpose.
So busy.
Classic corporate power move.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams announced Sunday that he is ending his campaign for re-election. The mayor made the announcement in a video on social media. He says his main reason for dropping out is a lack of funding. Take a look.
And yet, despite all we've achieved, I cannot continue my re-election campaign. The constant media speculation about my future and the campaign finance board's decision to withhold millions of dollars have undermined my ability to raise the funds needed for a serious campaign.
Adams went on to caution New Yorkers against what he says is a rise in divisiveness and political violence.
Major change is welcome and necessary, but beware of those who claim the answer to destroy the very system we built together over generations. That is not change, that is chaos. Instead, I urge New Yorkers to choose leaders.
Just boil it down, Adams. Come on. Boil it down. Say it what it really is. New York is the city of capitalism, and Mamdani represents Marxism. They are antithetical to each other. Period.
By what they promised, but by what they have delivered.
Adams was elected mayor in 2021, succeeding Bill de Blasio. In his time as mayor, much of his focus went toward lowering crime and rebuilding the city's economy after it was disrupted by the COVID pandemic. But his administration also faced heavy allegations of corruption. Last year, he was indicted on charges of bribery and fraud, and his approval ratings plummeted.
Now, Adams did not explicitly throw his support behind any of the other remaining mayoral candidates. Polls continue to show Democratic nominees are on Mamdani with a big lead over former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Now, Mamdani responded to Adams' decision in an interview, saying he doesn't think this will have much of an impact on the race. Cuomo posted his own response on X, writing, quote, "The choice Eric Adams made today was not an easy one, but I believe he is sincere in putting the well-being of New York City ahead of personal ambition. We face destructive extremist forces that would devastate our city through incompetence or ignorance, but it's not too late to stop them."
So the politics of this is that Eric Adams getting out does help Andrew Cuomo. They're competing for the more moderate slice of the electorate. Eric Adams is the incumbent mayor, so this is kind of a big deal that he just is deciding no longer to run for re-election, although he says he was so hamstrung by the legal issues he's facing. This is going to help Cuomo a little bit. Now, Zohran Mamdani is very far ahead, so I don't think it fundamentally alters the shape of the race. Mamdani is still, he was before almost.
I thought it was 45%, and Cuomo was 25, maybe 30%. Adams was 16. So if all of the supporters for Adams went to Cuomo, it's a dead heat. The question is will the older voters vote for Cuomo more than the younger voters that will vote for Mamdani? I think there are more older people in New York. When I say older, I'm talking about older than 30. I think the Mamdani voter is probably 25, maybe 30, maybe 20, 27 years old, all the way up to, to 18, right? Okay, so 18 to 27. Anyone older than 27 years old, will they be voting for Mamdani or not? I'm not sure. I would say that they would most likely vote for Cuomo. So I think this is a much closer race between Cuomo and Mamdani.
virtually certain to win. He's now, I think, just very likely to win. But we could get some polls indicating something else. If this helps Cuomo get some momentum, then maybe it'll be a different story. But we have to wait to see that.
I think I agree with Mamdani that this announcement was kind of insignificant. Eric Adams' approval rating has plummeted, like we said.
It's not about the approval rating.
So low because of his.
It's not about the approval rating.
That this is kind of like.
It's not about the approval rating. It was about the polls, the percentage of people that would vote for him, and one of the polls was there was like around 16%. And if Cuomo was at 30. Well, and Mamdani was at 45. Well, it's close. It's close.
Show between a former governor that was convicted of all this misconduct, sexual misconduct.
Allegedly convicted,
I mean, not convicted, accused of, sexual misconduct, but then also accused of all those incidents at the nursing home during the pandemic. So he's talking about poor leadership, and Eric Adams, if he is essentially going to throw his support behind Cuomo, saying, look at the history of how they ran the state. I think that's not a good.
I would have preferred Cuomo drop out. And
Eric
Adams personally.
That's kind of random. Also, he's going to come to people. I don't know who dislikes who more, and also people are so exhausted and extremely priced out of even living in New York that Mamdani even offering what to you may feel like unrealistic solution sounds better than no solution, or sounds better than them saying, "Oh, good old boys club." Oh, Cuomo and Trump talk often. Obviously, they think that. Cuomo and Eric Adams and Trump must talk often, and he helped that man get out of trouble. So it's kind of like, well, who's on our side? It seems like Trump's Trump friends, and then Mamdani.
You know, I've said many times that I don't really have a dog in this race because I despise Andrew Cuomo because of the COVID leadership, and Zoran Mamdani, I disagree with his ideas, and he seems like a nice person, but
he's a Marxist.
Far more irritating to me lately, and on a serious note, the whole left-wing violence thing from socialist-type people. He is a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, Zoran. So I'm wavering in my desire to remain neutral in this contest because as much as I really despise Andrew Cuomo, he's not a socialist. So I don't know. I'm wavering.
We're gonna keep talking about this, especially as election day comes up.
Next up, conservatives are blasting the NFL over who they chose to be the Super Bowl halftime performer. We'll be right back after this.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this foundational stack to help slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. Complete multivitamin. This has the multivitamins for the cofactors for proper enzymatic activity so your cells perform properly and your tissues perform properly. Super important to take, and this is easy to digest. So take the multivitamin that I have on my store and get it with the probiotics. I have it in powdered form or in veggie cap form. By taking a good probiotic, you're going to improve your gut biome, you're going to improve your immune system in your gut, you're going to improve your energy absorption, your metabolism. You're also going to improve your sleep, consolidation of memory, and you're going to be detoxifying your central nervous system. Amazing how that works. And improve your skin. A good gut biome will help a lot in terms of your overall health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the probiotics either in the veggie cap version or in the powdered version. Take it every day. Drink it with filtered water. And also take the multivitamin I have, the complete multivitamin. That's the foundation, and you build off of it. Now, if you want to get the whole protocol, you take the foundation, and then you take the different pillars. The first pillar is the Max 35 or cleanse to boost up that immune system. C60 is the second pillar to soak up free radicals. The third pillar is the turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to rev up your metabolism and help with your cardiovascular health. And then Boomer Boost to rev up your energy levels and metabolism. All right? When you do that, you're going to slow down the aging process. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right. Now, let's listen into "We Should Be Scared to Death," former Trump White House lawyer. I don't know what this. Let's see. MSNBC is commenting about Trump here.
It starts with a spark. Now to the Trump administration's widening weaponization web, the growing cluster of people being personally targeted for federal investigations. Yesterday, after celebrating an indictment against James Comey, Trump said Comey's successor, Christopher Wray, has some major explaining to do. In the last 7 days, Trump has also been name-checking Democratic donors while attempting to demonize his political opposition.
The Department of Justice is also investigating networks of radical left maniacs who fund, organize, fuel, and perpetrate political violence. I hear names of some pretty rich people that are radical left people. I'm the president of all the people. But the radical left is causing this. The radical left Democrats are causing this problem. It's about justice, really. It's not revenge. It's about it's also about the fact that you can't let this go on. They are sick, radical left people, and they can't get away with it.
Joining me now, Ty Cobb, former White House counsel during the first Trump administration. He represented the Office of the Presidency during the Robert Mueller investigation, as well as the one, well, that one, of course, into the Russian election interference. Ty, I'm glad you're here because I'm curious your big picture on why Trump publicly pressured his attorney general to go after perceived rivals. I mean, some of these people were simply doing their jobs and is now, teeing up these investigations at Democratic political groups.
Yes, I think, it's really not complicated. I mean, this is Trump's narcissism in full blossom. If you've got him acting like a 2-year-old, putting up pictures of all the presidents and having Biden's be the auto pin, putting his mugshot up in the White House, just doing silly things, the memes, having Obama arrested in the Oval Office. This is just juvenile vengeance. And if you've offended Trump in the past, you have some vulnerability here. He will target you and he will try to destroy you.
Yeah, I was thinking what you said about the President Biden auto pen. That is in that new presidential wall of honor that you have in one of the corridors, and everybody else's face is there except Joe Biden's. There's just an auto pen. Okay, so Lindsay Halligan, as you know, was appointed Saturday, sworn in Monday, and then by Thursday secured the indictment that Trump has wanted for at least 5 years. Should we be impressed or troubled by how quickly the system can turn against its citizens?
Oh, I think we should be scared to death. First of all, at 30,000 feet, the fact that a man was indicted who the Justice Department, in the ordinary course of traditional processes, investigated and concluded there was insufficient evidence to justify a criminal prosecution. But because he was an enemy of the president, and because the president ordered his feckless attorney general to prosecute him now, that should scare us all. I mean, Justice Jackson, when he was attorney general in 1940, made it very plain that targeting individuals as opposed to merely investigating crimes was the distinction between America and third world regimes. There was something that didn't happen here. Griffin Bell made the same point about how inappropriate it would be to prosecute anybody out of favor or for political partisan reasons. So, historically, that's not America. This isn't America as we've known it. This is really authoritarianism, and it should scare everybody.
So, Ty, for the many Republicans that are just cheering him on, what points are they missing?
The lawyer isn't talking about what about the legal lawfare or the unlegal lawfare that was going on the last 6-8 years against Trump. Oh, now Trump is instead of being hunted, he's the hunter, and everybody needs to worry now. The deep state was going after a president they couldn't control. And now all of a sudden he's saying, I'm back and I'm going to kick ass. And now everyone's all worried because they broke the law. The deep staters broke the law. And it's finally, we have a real president that's saying, you know what? We need to shine a light on this administrative state that thinks they're not beholden to the Constitution and we the people. What about the lawfare that was happening against Trump? No word on that.
I think that is such a hard question to answer. I don't know whether they're missing anything, whether the Kool-Aid is just so strong that they can't see the way liberty is eroding in the United States, whether it's First Amendment freedoms or just the general protections that the Constitution guarantees, all citizens. But it is shocking. I mean, you have farmers who just take soybeans alone. They've lost $15 billion in Chinese purchases. But the majority of them supported Trump, and they still do. They expect to be bailed out with, our money, merely because of the, mistaken tariffs that Trump imposed. And so as a result, we get hit twice. We get hit with the tariffs, and then we get hit with the subsidy to the farmers. This is just craziness, and it is sad. I mean, and as you were going on with others about right now,
money is fungible. Now, I don't know if there's going to be a bailout for the farmers, but if you're bringing in $400 billion worth of tariffs annually, and you're, let's say, helping the farmers by $100 billion, then you're really just taking the money from the tariffs and helping the farmers. And if they're complaining it was the tariffs that caused them to sell less to China, then okay. Help the farmers out with the tariffs. It's not a big deal. But here, you have a lawyer that's not an economist or an accountant, or even showing the true spectrum of this lawfare that's taking place. Trump is hunting now. That's what he's doing. He's hunting. The deep state thought they would be the hunter. They never thought they would be the prey. And it's about time. It's about time to hold these people accountable. And I'm willing to bet that if Pam Bondi holds to her position on this and continues on with the investigation, that there are many deep staters that actually broke the law to overthrow the elections, multiple elections, not just 2016.
The invasion of Portland, that's not an accident. And they're just, the things that are going on here are more than one or two deviations from the norm. These are really 180 degrees from the norm, and people need to wake up.
Ty, given you were in the Trump administration and the difference between then and now, what do you think it is? Do you think that Donald Trump learned how to harness his power in a way that he was not aware of, or at least had the guardrails in place in the first administration to keep him from doing so?
So I think there are two things. One, he was
guardrails. Well, wait a minute here. Oh, so what she really means is deep staters within the organization to slow walk his policies. See, the guardrail is the Constitution. If he does anything against the Constitution, then the legal courts will say you can't do that, and then he'll have to stop, which has happened, not always, but has happened during his administration. And if he does something so egregious, Congress can impeach him. That is the guardrail. It's improper to have guardrails by individuals that were not elected, that are part of the administrative state, slow walking a president's agenda. So let's define what guardrail means. If he does anything egregious, he could get impeached. And we still have our judicial system. He didn't go against the judicial system. If it goes to the Supreme Court and they say you can or can't do something, then he does it. What do you mean there's no guardrails? Oh, the deep staters. If you throw out the deep staters, if you hunt down the deep staters, if you stop the slow walking of his policies, and you have to remember his policies, as long as they're within the constitutional rights, are of the will of the people. This is what the will of the people want.
to the government, and he relied on others who were more experienced, which was wise. His coterie of sycophants, had 4 years to sort of plan this. The Russ Voigts and the Stephen Millers and the Steve Bannons, all got together and concocted Project 25 and other authoritarian wish lists, and they're executing effectively without sufficient resistance, I think. Secondly, as you highlight, there were guardrails. You had people like General Mattis, Nikki Haley, real public servants, people who were smart, strong, and not afraid to tell the president that he was wrong. You had General Kelly, whose service to the country, I think, is becoming clearer and clearer as we see what's happening now, because he was able to restrain Trump for a couple of years against his worst instincts, and it took a big toll on General Kelly, sadly, but he performed heroically in that role.
At the end of the day, we are fighting for hundreds of civilians. Just focus on performance.
He performed heroically in that role. We don't have anybody in this regime who's doing anything other than but what Mamdani does. You want me to indict it now? Yes, sir. How fast can I get that done for you? That's not the role of the Department of Justice. The Department.
I think he just admitted that it was a bunch of people around him in the first administration that was slow walking his policies. And as long as it's constitutional, as long as it, if it needs to be litigated and he follows the courts, then he's okay. Because that's our system. That's our legal system. That's the way our Constitution was written. That is the guardrail. He hasn't done anything unconstitutional. Now, if he goes to court and then does something that's against the court, and he's not obeying the court, then that's grounds for impeachment or censure or whatever. Something in Congress will have to happen, but that hasn't happened. That has not happened. He is doing everything within his power, and that if he does step over the line with his power and it gets bounced back by the Supreme Court or the judicial system, he stops. So what was more egregious? Individuals around him slow walking his policies in the first term? Because you got to remember, when they're slow walking the policies, these people are for the administrative state, for the national security state, the erosion of your constitutional freedoms, and for globalization. That's what they represented. And he's now trying to unravel that. He's saying, you know what? The national security state maybe is a little too big. Maybe they need to be beholden to the actual government, the elected government. Maybe unfettered globalization was bad for the United States, especially in terms of its military prowess. Maybe we need to get a hold on bringing back manufacturing. And Trump is the bad guy? No, the people that were slow walking his policies in the first administration were treasonous. The guardrails. It's the same. It's just like Peter Strzok and how he told his girlfriend, we won't let Trump be president because we're part of the administrative state. We won't let it happen. We know better. We know better than the American people. So you get a bunch of people within the administration that slow walks the policies because they know better. That's a deep government that's not elected, overriding what the will of the people want. If the will of the people want to end globalization, and it's in the context of what is legal within our Constitution, then it should be done. Not have a bunch of administrative slow walkers preventing it from happening.
And that's what Trump is dealing with. And it's not Trump. It's not just Trump. Many other presidents of the modern age have been saying that this is a problem. Eisenhower was talking about how it was becoming more and more difficult for the president to actually do anything. Obama, even though I didn't like his presidency, Obama was mentioning it in his memoirs. Bush was mentioning it in his memoirs. I haven't read Clinton's memoirs yet, Bill Clinton's memoirs. So the point here is you have presidents going all the way into the Cold War saying that there is an administrative state that prevents them or tries to slow walk their policies. And their policies are in tune with the will of the people, the ones that elected Congress, the Senate, and the president. So what happens when these two groups aren't meeting in the middle? When the administrative state is going against what the will of the people want. Our Constitution isn't we the people, except when the deep state thinks it knows better. Blah, 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 blah. That's not our government. It's we the people, not we the administrative state.
It's supposed to be independent.
It's just, when I think about what's to come, what's most scary for you, Ty? I mean, do you envision the fact that Donald Trump is putting troops, federal troops, into different cities? Is part of the reason behind that not only to show power where those are, but to maybe maintain them there beyond whatever the state?
It's all speculative what she's saying, but the bottom line is this: there's two reasons why they're in these environments. The crime is too high, and ICE agents are being prevented from doing their job in getting rid of the illegal aliens. It's not like some sort of takeover of the country. So, and you got to pay attention to what's going on. You have the World Soccer events that will be taking place. You'll have the Olympics. You have the 250th anniversary of the country, and the midterm elections. So you're going to have people that hate Trump, hate Republicans, hate democracy, hate capitalism, trying to create havoc. He's trying to clamp it down before it gains momentum, because he's trying to prevent a Black Lives Matter type event that took place in recent history.
Is have them be there around election time next year in November and beyond.
Yeah, so I'm not so sure about the midterms, but I think 2028 is is something everybody should be very focused on. I think a lot of these things are practice exercises. We've seen federal troops, National Guard, being sent around the country, California, Washington, now Portland, Memphis, and with others on the agenda. Chicago, he insists, is coming up. I think, and his comments today or yesterday, basically where he's made it plain that his sole focus right now is on targeting domestic enemies, George Soros, anybody who raises money for the Democrats, Act Blue, any person who's opposed them in the past. So this is just narcissistic vengeance, at its core. This is authoritarianism. This is what has historically distinguished us from, the Allende's Chile, Stalin's Russia, Hitler's Germany, the Khmer Rouge's Cambodia. People need to wake up to that. And I think that takes me to the point that really does scare me the most, which is how few Americans seem to really appreciate how desperate the times we are in right now, and the necessity of stepping up and saying, stop, this is not America, this is not who we are. We love our neighbors. We want to get back to fighting poverty, inclusiveness, and bringing people together and moving forward like the shining light on the hill that we once were. That's not us anymore. The lights are out.
Ty Cobb, it's always good to talk with you, and I'll have you back again very soon because I appreciate it.
Shining on the Hill was about capitalism, about self-determination, and about individualism, not collectivism, not Karl Marx. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the drops or the lozenges. You're going to need them for the fall and the winter season. Super important to mitigate any sort of irritation in the throat. These are very high quality drops and lozenges. Take them right away. Have some at work or at home. You never know when you need them, but get a few bags of these. You can get from my store the drops in cherry flavor, honey and lemon, and in blueberry. Get a few bags for your household. Super important. Very high quality. Mitigate the irritation right away. I also have in stock elderberry zinc lozenges. Get a few bags for your household. If you have that throat irritation, take it right away. Super important, especially for this fall and winter season. I can't tell you this enough. It's super important. Another great stack to help with your cardiovascular system, your immune system, is to take the following and to slow down the aging process. Ashwagandha root brings down cortisol levels and helps your blood glucose levels. Turmeric brings down inflammation and also soaks up free radicals. And lignans boosts up your immune system, your endocrine system, brings down inflammation and soaks up free radicals. When you stack this together, guess what? It's helping your immune system. It's helping your cardiovascular system. And when you're bringing down inflammation at the systemic level, including your cerebral system, you're protecting your neurons. That's another added benefit. But this also helps to reduce the severity of what's coming in the fall and winter. Boost up that immune system. Bring down that inflammation. Super important. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the lignans, the turmeric, and the ashwagandha. Get healthy, slow down the aging process, boost up that immune system, help with your cardiovascular system and your brain function. And the severity, reduce the severity of the fall and the winter. I've been telling you to take that stack for over 5 years. If you have a problem in the fall and the winter, you should be taking that stack. Trust me on this. All righty, let's listen in to Bloomberg.
And President Trump threatening a 100% tariff on movies made outside the U.S. Checking Netflix, it's about flat right now. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Alexis Christophorous. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Alexis, thank you so much, and welcome to the Monday edition of Balance of Power. Live from Washington, I'm Joe Matthew. Thanks for being here as we count down, yes, to a possible shutdown. We'll drag out the countdown clocks a little bit later because nothing came from another weekend in which lawmakers could have been negotiating here. Lines have been drawn. One thing, though, we can add a new wrinkle. 3 p.m. today, I told you I was going to mention the president's schedule. It's not just Benjamin Netanyahu. And I will remind you, about an hour from now, we expect a bilateral news conference from these two leaders on yet another visit to the White House with a potential ceasefire in Gaza at hand. But at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, shortly after Netanyahu leaves the building, it's going to be the top 4 congressional leaders in the Oval Office with the president. This is the meeting that was on and then off last week. Schumer, Jeffries, Thune, Johnson in the Oval. Interesting, it'll be the first time that President Trump has ever sat down with Hakeem Jeffries, who likes to call President Trump a con man, and spoke to reporters about the stakes earlier today. Let's listen.
We've made clear that we are willing to find a bipartisan path forward on a spending bill negotiated by Democrats and Republicans. But it has to meet the needs of the American people. We're not going to simply go along to get along with a Republican bill that continues to gut the health care of everyday Americans. Our line in the sand is the bill has to help everyday Americans, not hurt everyday Americans.
This is on the eve of the shutdown, which is why everyone seems to think that, well, some sort of shutdown is inevitable, even if it's a couple of days. Maybe it'll be a couple of months. This is the whole narrative from last week, right? Russ Vogt is drooling over this idea to get the keys to the kingdom and decide what is essential and what is not. You know who's still as cool as can be? America's dad. Checked in with him first thing when I walked in this morning, and maybe you've even heard him on the air today. 40% the odds, run by our good friend Nathan Dean, senior policy analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence. And yes, we pulled him back into the studio because it's Monday. That means his podcast is dropping on this RSS feed today. Nathan Dean, it's good to see you. It's like, Christmas Eve around here or something, right? Except nothing's going to happen, is what you've been guessing. Is this meeting today a game changer?
So I don't think the meeting today is all that important unless President Trump comes out and signals some support for these extension of healthcare subsidies. That's about it. I think the Republicans don't want President Trump to talk about it. And I think President Trump is somewhat open to the idea. But if they can keep him on message and say, let's not talk about it, then I think we go into tomorrow with the headline saying the shutdown's coming. Now, the reason why I was at 40%, and the joke was I'm 40% but probably wrong, is because I do think there's a chance here for another 1 or 2 week CR to keep the negotiations going. Because these shutdowns, if you will, they don't happen until the moments before the deadline when parties come back and say, look, are we going to shut the government down? Are we going to accept the blame? And are we willing to have this work out politically advantageous to us? And I don't see that happening just yet. Now, I hate to say this for our production team, but when it comes to Representative Jeffries or Speaker Johnson, they don't matter in this fight.
Why?
The House has already passed a clean CR. It's not like the House is going to come back. Representative Jeffries, it's not like the Democrats in the House are ever going to be supporting you. Tomorrow morning, when folks wake up, just have to pay attention to Senator Thune and Senator Schumer.
If they make a change, though,
if they make a change,
these guys do matter. Are you suggesting that clean CR gets another run, another vote, and they find a way to pass it?
Well, the Republicans were talking about that just now in the conference. I was watching some of the tweets coming in from our Bloomberg News reporters, and they were saying that the Republicans were looking for potentially to bring them back to town because the House Democrats are actually taking up a lot of the airwaves of the moment. The Republicans aren't here in the House. Bring them back to town and see what they can do, maybe potentially put them up for another vote just to see where they stand right before the shutdown. Now, I think the way, if it were to happen, is the Senate would then agree to a 1 week CR, they vote on it, the House would have to go to unanimous consent. But if there is a shutdown, and if we do this on Wednesday, and I'm saying I'm sorry, what I think happens is you have a shutdown that goes into this week, and most importantly, for the market participants that are listening to this call at the moment, the BLS has already said that they're not going to come up with their jobs data and they're going to delay it while the shutdown continues. I had a client come in this morning and just say, well, does this mean the Federal Reserve's not going to get it? Because the Federal Reserve already needs this. The answer is most likely not. And so the data aspect of this is the one that I think the market participants need to be looking at the most because markets don't really react to it. And then if we get into a shutdown that is in, let's say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and just remember, 750,000 to 1 million government workers paid every other week, there's an economic aspect to this as well. So if we get into a shutdown that's lasting a month or so, then the economic story comes in, and then the markets potentially could come back after.
See, I told you he was going to say that. Now, our crack production team is standing by in the Senate. I'm the guy who called for Jeffries because it was today. Both Senate leaders were on Sunday morning TV, drawing their lines. Let's listen to Thune and Schumer from Meet the Press.
Totally up to the Democrats. The ball's in their court.
there's a bill sitting at the desk in the Senate right now. We could pick it up today and pass it.
We've been resolute that we need a meeting, that we need a real negotiation, that you don't do this by one party putting together a completely partisan bill and saying take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. Does it feel different when it's the day of, is your point, right? You get the conference in a room. Are we really doing this, guys? There's a vote in an hour. What are we going to do? That changes the psychology. Is that meeting today then just for show? They come out to the sticks, the president goes on Truth Social, and nothing's changed.
Yeah, I think today's meeting is just for show because it is at the White House. The meeting that I want to see happen is over at Capitol Hill. And if Senator Thune and Senator Schumer get into a room and say, look, are we going to do this or not?
Yes.
Call this probably around tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. That's when I will start thinking, like, hey, this may actually happen. So if we get into a situation where the Democrats in the Senate, again, the House Democrats, I don't think really matter here. But if we get into a situation where the Democrats in the Senate on their internal calls, and I'm going to be looking for the Bloomberg News reporters to start telling us what they're saying behind the scenes, if they continue to say, let's go forward with the shutdown, then I'm going to say we're going to most likely do this. The one thing I would throw out there is just more of like my black sheep scenario where I think is coming out is the Virginia and Maryland senators.
Yes.
Because if Russ Vogt gets his way,
I think you've been dead on.
Yeah, if Russ Vogt gets his way and they start laying off a lot of folks, it's going to be the folks in Northern Virginia and in Prince County that ultimately are going to be bearing the brunt of this. And if I'm one of those 4 Democratic senators, I'm not sure I want to put my constituencies at risk.
And if you've got a gubernatorial race rolling in Virginia, Tom Emmer said it himself on the air. Democrats let the government shut down, and that's his angle on this. They're going to lose the gubernatorial race in Virginia. Now, I don't know if that's a real possibility here. Abigail Spanberger is way ahead the Democrat in this race. But that's got to be present in their thoughts and deliberations.
Absolutely. I mean, because look, I can't tell you that if the government were to lay off workers, would that be good for the Democrats or bad for the Republicans? I just can't tell you because Doge occurred and it didn't seem to really change the approval labels all that much. Right. The Democratic approval rating right now is around 30%. That's not great. President Trump is higher than that. So from the Democratic perspective, they'll say, look, let's have a shutdown now. Let's figure it out. And then let's get our party back on track before November 2026. Because if you remember, the Tea Party did this back in 2013, and it didn't really hurt them, came to the midterms in 2014. So when it comes to the Virginia and New Jersey races, I'm sure the folks down in Trenton and Richmond are like, hey, we don't want to play here, get this resolved. But there could be some national politics in play as well.
And, that's why that November 21 CR was kind of an interesting timeline when you consider the gubernatorial contests here as well. Look, locally, you live around here, obviously. This is a big economic story locally, realizing that the market's not concerned specifically about the DMV region. But all those who were on paid leave from the Doge stopped getting checks, as well as the purported mass layoffs that the White House is putting forth. All of a sudden, Washington is not recession-proof. In fact, it might have its own recession.
I can tell you that the number 2 topic at the flag football fields over in McLean on
the number 2 topic.
The number 1 was flag football.
I'm glad you did.
And the ref in particular. Yeah. But the number 2 one was, is Congress going to come back and retroactively pay these government workers? Because remember, government workers, Congress has always said they're going to get a retroactive.
Right.
I'm not exactly sure that I can honestly say 100% that that's going to occur this time. And if this shutdown goes a month, that could be a month without pay. If you're also a government contractor, a buddy of mine owns his own contracting firm. He's like, how long is this shutdown going to last? Because I only have so much cash flow that can keep me going where I'm paying my workers at 100%. So I would say is that there is a very much a local issue here. And this is why we should definitely be paying attention to it. But I also go back to my thought is that if we do have a shutdown, I think it gets resolved by this weekend because I don't think the Democrats want to give Russ Vogt enough time to get a plan going into fruition.
That's a really big part of the story here, obviously. Congressional staffers lose their pay in a shutdown, right?
Yep.
So the boss sees this firsthand in the office.
I think the Capitol Hill gym stays open, though. I think that's one of the things that's being central. But look, shutdowns are not good for those of us in the D.C. region. Whether you're a mother who wants to take your child to the National Zoo or you're just trying to go to a museum or something like that, we all feel it. But at the end of the day, the folks over on Capitol Hill are looking at this from the national perspective. And that's why I keep going back to this idea that the Virginia and Maryland senators are the ones that I think will eventually step in here and say, maybe this is something we got to deal with. But ultimately, the Democrats also want to see the fight They don't want to be seen fighting President Trump.
Yeah.
If Senator Schumer caves and makes a deal like he made in March, then I think Senator Schumer's in a big trouble with the rest of his party.
Wow. All right, I can't have Nathan in here without asking you about the cannabis, because the president brought it up again. You see, this Sunday shared a video online promoting the health benefits of cannabis. Quote, the most important senior health initiative of the century, it said. MJ, the ETF up 15% today. It's just the latest dose of hot sauce. Is it real?
Yeah. So
what's he doing on Truth Social?
I think that there's two scenarios that will play out for reschedulization. If you're one of the retail investors, you want scenario one, which is President Trump essentially waves a magic wand and says rescheduling done today. That's what I think a lot of the retail investors want. Now, I'm a little bit on a naysayer on scenario one because I think scenario two plays out where you're going to see a positive statement from President Trump saying, look, we're going to do reschedulization, but he's also going to kick the can and put it back into the process of the FDA.
Okay.
So I think it's going to take time.
Fascinating. More calls today on BLS or weed?
BLS.
BLS. All right. You never know. I have to ask. Nathan Dean, ladies and gentlemen, Bloomberg and Teller.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAD+. NAD+ supplement will boost up your NAD+ levels, increase your energy, help to repair your DNA damage, and protect your neurons. Super important, especially in the aftershock of 2020. Ubiquinol, the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can get. This will soak up free radicals, improve the health of your mitochondria, increase your energy levels, and protect your neurons. This is a powerful stack to protect your neurons. You can also stack it with C60, resveratrol, even with clarity factor. But protecting your neurons on a regular basis is super important. Please go to my store and take the NAD+ and the Ubiquinol. Also, go to the store, my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. And get the Gladiator Barley. Build muscle. This stacks very well with Boomer Boost and Myotrol. Remember, Myotrol helps with the gene expression to build muscle. Gladiator Barley will help to build that muscle. It's a high-density protein. It will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. Now, when you take Gladiator Barley and you're soaking up those free radicals and bringing down inflammation and detoxifying your body regularly, your immune system will improve, your endocrine system will improve, joint health will improve, cerebral health will improve. Because when you're bringing down inflammation at the cerebral level, you're creating a better microenvironment for your neurons. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take the Gladiator Barley. It's really important to detoxify your body every day. Bring down that inflammation. It's going to help with your immune system. That's super important for the fall and the winter. And you're going to be able to build muscle. Do some resistance training. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now let's listen in to Freezakar.
If it's gorgeous you want, look for the grit. Because it's the pros who are out there, pulling together dozens of projects a year. And they know we're remarkable.
But first, here's my take. The Trump administration's announcement last week about the new rules for H-1B visas, including that most will now require a $100,000 fee, made headlines. But few pointed out that, as usual, it played fast and loose with the rules that govern the process, which require a prior period of public notice and comment, invoking national security to levy the fee. The Trump administration has been following this pattern from the start. One of its early actions was to fire more than a dozen inspectors general, disregarding the law that required specific reasons for each one's firing and public notice. The administration seems to be ignoring and flouting laws and rules purposefully so as to erode the checks on its authority. It could have pushed Congress to pass legislation raising tariffs to whatever level Trump wanted. The Republican majorities there have denied him practically nothing. Similarly, it could have asked Congress to shut down USAID, since foreign aid has rarely been very popular. Instead, President Trump took unilateral executive action. The administration is deliberately refusing to play by the rules in ways that look to most observers like usurpations of authority, and accumulation of power. Some are deeply troubled by this, others brush it off. But the question I want to ask is, why? Why has America's vaunted system of checks and balances proved so weak? Among the Western democracies, America today stands out. Amid the widespread rise of populism, discontent with various establishments, and angry political rhetoric, the U.S. appears to have moved further than any other down the path of illiberal democracy, where constitutionalism and the rule of law are being steadily undermined. Hungary is the obvious other example, but Hungary is a very young and fragile democracy, scarred by decades of communism. The United States is the oldest constitutional republic in the world. And yet Sweden's V-Dem Institute has described the erosion of American democracy as unprecedented in scale. Any one of the administration's actions might have in a previous era provoked public outcry. But today we routinely see regulatory threats and lawsuits against media companies, threats to deny law firms government business or access to federal buildings, the use of the Justice Department to target political opponents, and the use of military forces within the United States. Some laud these moves as necessary acts of executive authority, but almost no one would disagree that the breadth and number of these actions are unprecedented, certainly in the half-century since Watergate. Ironically, part of the problem stems from the age of the Constitution, which in many ways is an enduring success. America's political framework actually dates back not even to 1776 or 1789, but further to the structures of government put in place by early English colonial settlers. This system was modern for its age, but that was 300 years ago. Today, to give one critical example, many Western democracies have departments of justice and electoral commissions that are independent of the elected government. In America, neither prosecutors nor elections are really insulated from politics or elected politicians. Since Watergate, certain norms have developed around the executive not interfering, but they are just norms, as the Trump administration has shown by breaking them without consequence. Similarly, other democracies have more nonpartisan ways to pick judges and fixed terms for them, unlike America's partisan mechanisms to appoint judges who then sit for life. Ironically, the world learned many of these checks and balances, such as the Supreme Court that has the ultimate power of review over laws, from America. But then they fine-tuned them as they were enacted. Stephen Levitsky, one of the foremost scholars of democratic collapse, the co-author of How Democracies Die, says that perhaps the most important reason for the institutional decay is that America has been so successful over the years that it has never seen the need to change. It's a truism in business and life that one rarely learns from success, only from failure. And America has won the Cold War, pioneered the information revolution, and continues to stand atop the world by many material measures. So we don't see the need to examine our own system, consider its flaws, and improve it. American exceptionalism has blinded us to weaknesses in our constitutional and political system, Levitsky says. Alongside this lack of introspection, Levitsky describes as crucial the failure of leadership. We have no memory of democratic collapse or authoritarian rule, he notes. In places like Poland and Brazil, generations know what it is like to have lost the rule of law and constitutional safeguards. But Republican leaders, business leaders, Supreme Court justices don't seem to think we could actually watch democracy decay and even die. This is America, they seem to think. We're different. That failure of imagination is creating a complacency that might prove deadly. Go to CNN.com/Fareed for a link to my Washington Post column this week.
I urge New Yorkers to choose leaders not by what they promise, but by what they have delivered.
Well, now now wait a minute, who was he talking about there? And what do we think about sitting in the stairwell for that video? If you were with us on YouTube, you see what I'm talking about. Knowing where the polls were, Eric Adams was at the bottom, even in the most recent Suffolk University poll, is trailing Curtis Sliwa. So will it make a difference? We assembled our political panel because they've had their eyes on this too. Rick Davis and Jeannie Shanzano, Bloomberg Politics contributors, are back together on this Monday. Jeannie is Democracy Visiting Fellow at Harvard's Kennedy School Ash Center. Rick is partner at Stone Court Capital and our Republican strategist. Jeannie, you know polls as well as anybody. Will this actually make a dent? If Eric Adams was at 8% here, Mr. Mamdani was at 45%, what just happened?
Joe, I thought you were going to bring us in on Old Blue Eyes, a little Frank Sinatra, because that's what Eric Adams played in his video. So when you said two, I got all excited for some I did it my way. There was just him at the bottom of the stairway, which was telling. It's where he is in the polls. You know, of course, the main beneficiary of this is Andrew Cuomo. That said, Eric Adams was 8 or 9% in the polls, depending on which polls you look at. And so even if he gets all of those supporters, it's not enough to help him. You know, there is a scenario in which Cuomo could make a go of this, particularly if Curtis Sliwa, the Republican, got out and it was a two-man race. But Curtis is saying he's staying in, and that makes it really, really tough for Cuomo. So I think the polls are still pretty clear. Mamdani, double-digit lead, and he's held that ever since they began polling on this race after the primary election.
President Trump weighs in, Rick, says that Mamdani's victory would be, quote, one of the best things to ever happen to our great Republican Party, unquote. He's threatening as well to withhold federal funds from New York City if Mr. Mamdani is the next mayor. Is he right about one of the best things to happen to the Republican Party? Because this could be quite the foil for Donald Trump the next couple of years.
Yeah, there's no question that Republicans will make good use of it, especially in the midterms. I mean, Mamdani is going to become probably the most famous Democrat in the United States by the time you're done with the 2026 advertising campaign. I mean, he will appear in legislative districts all over the country, you know, saying that this is the new Democratic Party, socialist. So prepare for that. And I think, as Jeannie said, this goose is pretty well cooked. Nothing else of any real substance is going to happen in this election. It's going to change the outcome. And fire the advance man. I mean, I've never seen a worse announcement from the bottom of the stairs. I mean, like so many symbols that are bad.
How true. Rick, you work at Stone Court Capital. You're in the private equity business. What is Wall Street? What does business in New York think of this prospect? Are they with Donald Trump? Do they see a communist coming down the road?
You know, there's a lot of spending going on in the business news channels in New York right now, and I think there's a determination now that we've got to find common cause with this guy before he wrecks the conditions of which exist. You know, that makes a lot of money in New York, and so yeah, I think the business community is very, very frightened at this point. They never saw this one coming. Everybody had this sort of arrogance that no way would the great city of New York, greatest commercial city in the world, elect a socialist to be the mayor of the city. So I think both on a business level and on a personal level, people are worried about the neighborhoods and safety and the cleanliness. You know, New York is first and foremost a neighborhood. Many of them, but it's how people live in the city and prosper in the businesses that surround them.
Jeannie, I'm curious to hear what's on your mind, if this in fact is a done deal and what might come from Mamdani's proposals in New York, of course, not all of which he will be able to enact, but also the fact that we talked about this before President Trump began asking people to drop out of this race. Everybody's name's still on the ballot. How much confusion will there be?
That's right. You know, we've got all of these people. It's too late to remove their names, even though he's suspending his campaign. You New Yorkers, I think, are wise enough to know that they'll get the message that he's no longer running. But it does create a wrinkle in the system. But I do think there is a small chance that Cuomo could resurrect his campaign. So you're looking at things like Do the police unions that were supporting Adams, do they endorse Cuomo? That said, look at something else. Hakeem Jeffries, you know, obviously the leading Democrat in the House, he has yet to endorse Mamdani. Similarly, Chuck Schumer. And Hakeem Jeffries got a lot of criticism over the weekend from Democrats because he thanked Adams for his service, and still neither one of them has endorsed Mamdani. So I think you are, to Rick's point, really talking about a huge challenge for moderate, middle-of-the-road Democrats who are very, very worried about what Mamdani has said he is going to try to do. And of course, he does have the endorsement of the governor, which gives him a leg up because she's facing a tough re-election. In that 6 months, if he's elected, he's going to need her. She's going to need him more. And he may get more from Albany than we would think he would if she wasn't facing such a tough re-election bid. So a lot of politics for Democrats at play here that are going to give Mamdani potentially a leg up if he's elected.
Well, you know, we're standing by, as I've mentioned a couple of times here, for a news conference at the White House. In fact, we just got our first view of the state dining room where President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu are going to be holding forth with reporters. There you see it on YouTube right now. They're just getting the room together and getting things prepped, the flags, the podiums in place. Rick, one of the concerns that some conservatives and even some progressives have in New York is over Zoran Mamdani's perceived relationship with the Jewish community. Based on his remarks in the past, he's tried to get around that, but I wonder to what extent that will play out in the voting results here.
Yeah, I think that he's got a really troubled relationship with the Jewish community in New York. I've heard references made to him that would be included in the listings of anti-Semitic remarks. I don't know offhand, but like that is a appearance that exists there. There's no question about it. And what is interesting to me is, having watched the campaign more intensely in the last couple months, is he doesn't seem to be really working that hard to fix that problem. No high-profile endorsements from Jewish community leaders, and so I do think that adds some of the tension to certainly that community that lives inside the city. So I think too it plays into the Trump narrative, is to sort of how out of the mainstream this individual is, Mamdani, and as you know, Donald Trump has made a cause fighting anti-Semitic behavior on college campuses and elsewhere. And regardless of the motivations, he now owns that and certainly will make good use of it in a Mamdani administration.
With all of this said, Jeannie, and considering what Rick is suggesting about the business community's view of the Mamdani candidacy here, do you believe turnout in New York will reflect what we're seeing in the polls?
It might. I think one thing to keep in mind is the primary, we use ranked choice voting, and we do not use that in the general election. I don't think that's going to change what we're seeing in the polls dramatically, but it is something to keep in mind. And of course, in a primary, you're talking very low turnout. It will be bigger and it will be more energized in the general, but still not as robust as it should be. So that can always have an impact. And, I mentioned before Chuck Schumer, there's a lot of speculation that his reluctance so far to endorse Mamdani is tied to this issue of anti-Semitism. And Mamdani, if you just look at the split, consider Joe Biden, how much he was hugging Israel, Netanyahu, the Israeli lobby, versus somebody like Mamdani, almost perfectly captures this deep division in the Democratic Party right now. And we are seeing it particularly amongst the young people. So this is a generational battle as well. Remember, Mamdani just a few weeks ago told the New York Times editorial board, if Netanyahu came to New York and he was mayor, he would have him arrested.
Well, look, that's why I ask, and I don't know your thoughts, Rick, on this split in the Democratic Party. Are all of those young people going to turn out to vote, or will it be more complicated than that?
Well, they certainly did during the primary. I mean, in the neighborhoods that were younger, we saw polling data that said he was 14 points above any other Democrat in the race in the youth vote, and not offset by a substantial vote in older neighborhoods. He referenced it, but New York City voters are not very good at turning out. I mean, an average turnout these days is below 25%. I mean, it's probably one of the nation's lowest voter turnouts in one of the greatest cities in the world. And so you really have to scratch your head and say, if there's a strategy here, it's to turn out people who don't normally vote. Now, it's a hard thing to do. I've been posed with having to try that myself when the electorate is normally turning out as opposed to you. But that has got to be Cuomo's strategy, is to go out there and say, there are 75% of the people registered and eligible to vote on election day who don't turn out. I need my share of those guys. I'm going to go get them.
Wow. Fascinating conversation. What a great deep dive with our signature panel on the mayoral race in New York. Rick Davis and Jeannie Shanzano. I guess, Jeannie, I should only apologize to my mother because I didn't bring her picture with me. But with apologies to Eric Adams, we'll leave you with a little bit of Frank here in hour one of Balance of Power. Many thanks to our panel, Rick Davis and Jeannie Shanzano. Yes.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients. It's going to target multiple systems: brain function, heart, the vascular system, the musculature, energy levels, and rev up your metabolism. Long term, you're going to notice that your body is slowing down its aging process. And when you are taking this very comprehensive compound profile of 68 nutrients, you're going to be improving your immune system, your endocrine system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. This stacks well with the Gladiator barley or the heirloom barley. Now, this is one of the pillars of this protocol that I have. The foundation of the protocol, the multivitamin and the probiotics. The first pillar, max 35 or cleanse to boost up the immune system. C60, soak up those free radicals. Third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. And when you're bringing down inflammation, you're also helping with your brain function. And Boomer Boost to rev up that metabolism and increase your energy levels. You will start feeling the effects of this within 72 hours. You're going to have more vitality and you're going to be more energetic. And if you stick to this and take this regularly, this is a month's supply, you do this throughout the year, you're going to notice that you are slowing down the aging process and you're healthier. So please go to my store, control your A1C levels, get healthy, improve your immune system. There's very powerful stuff here. Get the Boomer Boost, take it every day. Another great stack that I have is the D3, K2, and the nattokinase. Let's start with the nattokinase. Nattokinase is fibrinolytic. It's going to break up clots, and it also helps with your lipid profile. You should be taking this every day to improve your cardiovascular health, but also take this during the fall and the winter. Super important. Vitamin D3 helps with gene expression. It's a gene expression cofactor. It also helps cells to go into apoptosis if they're infected. It's very important to take during the fall and the winter. And vitamin D3 helps you to absorb calcium. So it's going to help with your bone structure. And it helps to pull some of that calcium deposits around plaque and reduce further calcium depositing. Super important. Stack it with vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 helps with absorbing calcium. If you stack it with the D3 and you do resistance training, you're getting denser bone, and you're helping with your cardiovascular system by not having further calcium depositing around plaque. If you take these, the D3 and the K2 together during the fall and the winter season, you're reducing the severity of what's coming. Super important. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, let's see here.
Meeting, make a difference. Welcome to the Monday edition as President Trump meets with congressional leaders at the White House just a day until a possible government shutdown. We've got a lot on the plate for us today. I'm Joe Matthew alongside Tyler Kendall in Washington. Thanks for being with us on Balance of Power. Tyler, that meeting is going to come after the president's meetings today with Benjamin Netanyahu, and of course the news conference that will follow could begin in just about 15 minutes time, assuming it takes place on schedule.
Right, exactly. A jam-packed day on multiple fronts here, Joe. We could potentially get some sort of movement when it comes to funding the government, and we're still waiting to see if there's going to be an agreement here towards ending the war between Israel and Hamas.
That's right. They've got a ceasefire and a 21-point plan on the table here, knowing that this has been a bit difficult, at least certain parts of it, difficult for Netanyahu to accept. The fact that they're facing reporters might give us a sense, though, of at least their hope to have a productive day here, Tyler. They've been behind closed doors now for about 2 hours.
Right, and we saw when President Trump greeted the Israeli Prime Minister today in front of the West Wing. He was asked about how these talks were going. He said he was, quote, very confident that there would be a peace deal.
In the Oval a bit later on today, not only the two Republican leaders, Thune and Johnson, but also Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, the first time President Trump has in fact met with him, knowing that Wednesday, 12:01, tomorrow night, if you will, the government is set to shut down if they don't get a deal together here. There are some rumblings about an even shorter term CR to buy a couple of days, Tyler. We'll see if that emerges.
I was going to say, are we just going to go over this again? Because maybe there'll be an even shorter term CR, but right now the Senate is looking at potentially kicking down the can down the road for 7 weeks until November 21st. So are we just going to be having this conversation?
It's CR heaven. We do a lot of kicking of the can around here. I want to let you know, Dusty Johnson, the congressman from South Dakota, is going to be talking with us in just a moment after we check Wall Street. Investors are looking at all of this as well. And Alexis Christophorous has the markets for us live from New York. Alexis, how's it going?
You bet. Thanks, Joe. A mixed market right now, but tech stocks stealing the show once again on Wall Street as we move closer to that possible government shutdown. The Dow Industrials down 56 points. Broader market higher with the S&P up about 11. NASDAQ gaining 101 points. The yield on the 10-year, 4.13%. The 2-year sitting at 3.62%. And we have got gold back at a record high, now trading at $38.32 an ounce. West Texas Intermediate oil down nearly 4% at $63.27 a barrel. Electronic Arts up nearly 5%. The maker of Madden, NFL, Apex Legends, and other video games agreeing to go private in a $55 billion leveraged buyout, the largest on record. The buyers here, Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, Silver Lake Partners, and President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner's Affinity Partners. Shares of Carnival reversing an earlier gain, down now nearly 5% after the cruise operator posted better than expected quarterly results and raised its full year outlook. Shares, by the way, were up 23% this year. Heading into today's earnings report, we've got shares of Norwegian and Royal Caribbean down in sympathy. Peloton preparing to roll out refreshed hardware and a software overhaul for its bikes and treadmills that include AI for personalization. Not impressing Wall Street, though. Shares of Peloton down more than 3%. And China's Huawei is planning to double output of its top AI chips in a bid to win customers as NVIDIA deals with those geopolitical headwinds. We've got shares of NVIDIA up, though, nearly 2%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Alexis Christophorous. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Back to Balance of Power now with Joe Matthew and Tyler Kendall.
All right, Alexis, thank you so much. Live from New York, Alexis Christophorous will have more on the markets, assuming our news conference doesn't begin before then. Just about 15 minutes from now, we'll check back on the Monday trade. I'm Joe Matthew, indeed, alongside Tyler Kendall for the balance of this week here on Balance of Power. And Tyler, it's great to have you standing with us here as we cover some pretty heady stuff today. We're 2 days out, less than actually a day and change from a potential government shutdown. We're going to be talking about that in just a second with Dusty Johnson. We've also got our eyes on geopolitics as President Trump meets with Benjamin Netanyahu. They are going to emerge at some point here this hour in a live news conference that will bring you live here on Bloomberg.
Right, a lot of different angles that we're watching for here, and particularly when it comes to the shutdown and the clock that is ticking tomorrow. We know that Republicans ultimately need at least 7 Democrats to get on board. Republicans, 53 votes, they need to get over to 60 in order to reach any sort of deal. So the question becomes, are they able to get that many to come over? Can they strike this deal before we ultimately careen into a shutdown?
Let's ask that question of someone who knows more than we do about this current moment in time. Dusty Johnson, the Republican from South Dakota, is with us now live on Bloomberg TV and radio. And Congressman, it's great to have you back. Our viewers and listeners should know that you were pivotal in the background in getting the president's big, beautiful bill across the finish line. You've been through a lot of these shutdown scenarios before, and I'm wondering what your gut tells you now. Does this meeting lead to something today? Is there an 11th hour save, or should we prepare for the lights to go out?
It would be wonderful if the big boys and the big girls in Washington, if we could get our act together and avoid the shutdown, but it really doesn't look like that's going to happen. It feels to me like we've got an 85% chance of going into shutdown. We have passed a bipartisan short-term funding deal out of the House on a bipartisan basis. Chuck Schumer does not seem interested in accepting that deal, and I think he seems pretty committed to a shutdown. I think that's where we're headed.
Congressman, do you see any sort of compromise that could emerge, in particular when it comes to extending the Obamacare premium subsidies that are set to expire? It seems like there might be some wiggle room on that provision, at least, whether that happens now or down the road if this short-term stopgap measure gets through.
What has sometimes been said is that nothing is as eternal as a government program. This is a little bit of proof of that. Here we've got some special assistance on healthcare, some subsidies that were put into place during the pandemic. And here we are having a hard time getting rid of them. Let's say that reasonable people can disagree about whether or not working class Americans should have these additional enhanced tax credits. Most of the benefits go to insurance companies. But let's just set that aside and say reasonable people can disagree about that. What we should be debating is whether or not we're going to spend $1.5 trillion of new spending as a part of a 6-week short-term stopgap funding deal. This is really unprecedented that the Democrats are saying that no, rather than negotiate on the healthcare stuff while the government is open, we prefer to negotiate while the government is shuttered. It seems like they're taking the American people hostage, and I just don't see how Republicans can go along with that.
Would you vote yes on a CR that had an extension of the Obamacare subsidies, or is that a deal breaker for you, Congressman? Because I know that you also have a piece of legislation that would deal with this on a much shorter term level and in fact prevent the government, if I read it right, from ever shutting down.
Yeah, shutdowns are stupid. We should not shut down. My bill with Senator Ron Johnson in the Senate, the Eliminate Shutdowns Act, would say anytime the clowns in D.C., we can't get our act together, rather than take the American economy hostage, we're just going to have a short-term 14-day CR to allow the politicians to get together. And that is, in essence, exactly what the Republican offer is today. Not for 2 weeks, but for 6 or 7 weeks until the Friday before Thanksgiving. It is unprecedented that a party would say, no, we don't want to negotiate for 6 weeks. Instead of negotiating, we're going to shut the whole thing down because we can't secure $1.5 trillion in new healthcare subsidies. I just think Chuck Schumer is asking for heaven and earth and spending and healthcare for illegal aliens and healthcare subsidies for rich Americans. There is no way on God's green earth that Republicans are going to give all of that up in return for just a 6-week stopgap.
Well, Congressman, what's also raised the stakes of these negotiations, perhaps, is that we know that there's been this OMB memo threatening permanent layoffs if the government does shut down. Do you think that's the right strategy here by Republicans to potentially use a shutdown period to slash the federal workforce?
In general, the party that loses the shutdown loses it because they don't seem reasonable. So right now, today, it's pretty clear to me that the Republican ask is very basic. It's not a Republican win or a Democrat win. It's just, hey,
let's keep the government open for 6 weeks while we negotiate. That is eminently reasonable, which means that I think that the current environment means that Democrats probably are going to be in some trouble. Now, I understand what the administration's trying to do, and Lord knows there's plenty of waste, fraud, and abuse to cut. So if they use that scalpel in a way that seems targeted and appropriate, I think it can help the messaging. If they go in and they do things that are a little bit more nuclear, I think that can make Republicans seem not quite so reasonable. That could shift the political landscape. So I would just say I expect the administration to do the right thing in cutting government during the shutdown. I don't think it's just a threat. I think Russ' vote is absolutely serious. I think he and President Trump are going to cut the places they think are appropriate to cut if we're in shutdown.
Well, you speak of the Eliminate Shutdowns Act. As a matter of fact, we're going to have Senator Ron Johnson on with us on the late edition of Balance of Power at 5 o'clock. So we've got both chambers covered here, Congressman. Isn't this the very reason why you're out? You're going to run for governor instead of put up with more of this?
No, I'm really not running away from Washington, D.C. I mean, it's been an honor of a lifetime. I do feel like I'm relevant. I get to be in a lot of rooms where we're trying to make America better. And frankly, the Republican House has done a much better job in the last 9 months than I think most people expected. So, no, I'm not running away from D.C. I'm really running toward my state that I love, and I think we've got some important things to do. And I think I'm the leader to help get them done.
And Congressman, I do want to pivot to another topic just quickly in our final minutes with you, and that has to do with tariffs, because we've seen a flurry of new announcements from President Trump in the past few days, and your fellow South Dakota colleague, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, did say, or suggested rather, in an interview over the weekend, that there are discussions about a potential bailout for U.S. farmers. You, of course, represent a top agriculture producing state. I'm wondering if you've had any discussions about what those potential solutions would look like.
Yeah, the last time we got into a trade dispute with China, American farmers were again the tip of the spear. A lot of the harm of that trade dispute fell on farmers. So Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue did put together a pretty good plan in 2 different tranches to help American producers. We're probably in a better position today to be able to finance that than we were back then. We've got hundreds of billions of dollars of tariff revenue coming in. I think most members of Congress, whether they're urban or rural, understand that spending some of that tariff revenue to try to shave down some of the most jagged edges of what the American farmer is going through probably would be helpful. China's doing everything they can to hurt the American soybean farmer. We probably need that. We absolutely should help the American soybean farmer get through this rough patch.
Mm-hmm. Congressman, it's great to have you back. Congressman Dusty Johnson of South Dakota, former chair.
Give them some of the tariff money. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. This is the second pillar of my core protocol. C60 will soak up free radicals. It's 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. C60 is a 60 carbon molecule suspended in a lipid. That's why it's in an oil. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, or MCT coconut oil. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, preferably on an empty stomach in the morning for best absorption. If you work out, take it before you work out, and you'll soak up the free radicals from that workout and recover quicker. This will help with your immune system, your endocrine system, your vascular system, and even your brain function. It's going to soak up free radicals, help with the health of the mitochondria, boost up your energy levels, reduce stress in the cell and your tissues. This is very important. At the vascular level, by soaking up free radicals, you're reducing oxidized LDL. Super important, because less oxidized LDL, less plaque formation. When you have healthier mitochondria in your neurons, you'll be able to create neurotransmitters. If you have less stress in your neurons are healthier. You'll be able to build that positive neuroplasticity. You'll be able to think better. You'll have better memory. Please go to my store, take this every day, and what you're going to notice within a year, visibly see yourself getting younger. This helps the basal layer of the skin, soaks up free radicals, increases the health of the basal layer where your new skin cells are being produced. So you will visibly see a better you. your endocrine system and your immune system will perform better, and you're going to be slowing down the aging process. Within 2 months of taking this, you're going to notice that you have more vitality and more energy, and you'll weather the storms of the seasonality of things. Take C60 every day to slow down the aging process and improve your immune system. But not just that, take it during the fall and the winter. Super important, because if you come in contact with something, then you're going to be producing lots of free radicals, you're going to have lots of inflammation, and you need to take C60 to calm that down and to reduce that damage of the tissues. You'll recover quicker. So please take my advice, get the C60, take it every day to slow down the aging process and boost up that immune system, but especially take it during the fall and the winter to weather the storm that's coming. It's really important. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 to get $5 off any order. Again, with the C60, you can get it in MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, or extra virgin olive oil. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. Take a teaspoon a day. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
Number of Hamas fighters been killed, Palestinian civilians as well, but most of the civilians of the Gaza city have actually fled under Israeli orders to displaced persons camps. And to hear the Israelis tell it, this is effectively the last push, the push which would either have seen Hamas destroyed militarily or destroyed diplomatically, if you like, by forcing it to surrender, lay down its arms, and cede power finally in the Gaza Strip. So yes, those things have been running in parallel. The Israeli argument is that as long as there's no ceasefire, fire will continue, and as long as there's no peace deal, certainly that firing will continue. However, we may see changes very, very soon, if indeed an hour from now, more or less, the US president, the Israeli prime minister announced that Hamas is on board for what would effectively be a deal ending this war and perhaps opening the situation up to a wider accommodation.
Would you take their word on that, Dan? And I ask you that because we've seen now 2 American presidents roll out multi-point peace plans that they said were accepted by both sides, and we learned after the fact that that was not the case. In fact, even Benjamin Netanyahu has wavered before Trump and Joe Biden on this matter.
I think yes. I think all around there is exhaustion, there is great pain, there is great trepidation about what the future holds. For Palestinians, it's clearly existential. Much of the Gaza Strip has been ruined, really laid waste by this war. For Hamas, it's existential, more on an institutional level. Obviously, if you're a Hamas member now in battle, you face almost certain killing or capture, but it would appear that this deal would offer amnesty, immunity to Hamas members who surrender, perhaps even safe passage out of the Gaza Strip. And that sounds like a pretty good deal if it's a choice between life and death or life and an open-ended prison term in Israel. Now, for the Israelis, there is the resources have been strained, the national resources, on a level really not seen in decades by this war. Israel's international standing has plunged. And I think it's worth remembering the United States under this president is really the last big power backing Israel. Other powers have turned against it, including Security Council powers, which have actually recognized the Palestinian state unilaterally. And I would really reckon that if the US president is running out of patience, I think he clearly is, and is laying this down as the deal that must work, I think Israel, and perhaps not just Israel, will do everything in their power to make it work.
Well, Dan, you're laying out the stakes here in great detail for us. If Israel's going to do everything in their power to make it work, is there a route here? What happens if diplomacy does collapse? Is there any sort of mechanism in place that will ensure that the negotiations and the talks will keep going?
I don't think anyone is in this for continued open-ended talks. I think, as I referenced at the beginning of this interview, the nomenclature has changed. It's no longer talk of a ceasefire. A ceasefire is by definition temporary, cold-eyed, self-interested, and works on the assumption that firing will resume at the end of that ceasefire. Trump is talking about peace. He wants an end of this war, and he wants good news. And you know what? We're a few days away from the first week of October. That's traditionally where the Nobel Prize Committee announces It's the winner of the Peace Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize. I wouldn't be at all surprised if the reason there is a sense of a rush around this is that the US president and his supporters are hoping that he will be named in the coming days for that Peace Prize, the Nobel. And indeed, the Israeli Prime Minister has already nominated him for that prize. So I think for various reasons, good, perhaps less good, immediate, less immediate, really there's a great sense of urgency here. It's also the second year mark, the second anniversary, if you like, of the war beginning, just over a week away. I think everyone would like to end the war before it becomes a 2-year war. It's already Israel's longest war. So really, there are so many vectors pointing now to a willingness to make this diplomacy work. It will not be open-ended diplomacy. I think what Trump will tell everyone involved is, I'm washing my hands of you if this doesn't work, and we'll just let the forces of war sort it out, which basically means Israel continues in the Gaza Strip, crushes Hamas militarily, potentially loses those hostages still surviving, loses more soldiers, more Palestinian civilians suffering, and then effectively a bloody, unquestionable end when there's simply no one left standing.
Dan Williams doing a wonderful job reporting for Bloomberg in Jerusalem. Dan, thank you so much for helping to set the table ahead of this news conference, which will be taking place today in the state dining room as opposed to the East Room where you normally see the gold drapery behind the president and other world leaders. Today, we've got American and Israeli flags set up in the state dining room and a large room full of reporters and others who are looking to hear from these two men. As soon as they start speaking, of course, we will join them live here on Bloomberg TV and radio. It was scheduled to begin 5 minutes ago, and things tend to slide on days like these. They've been behind closed doors since a little after 11 o'clock this morning, talking about the buried issues that we just discussed with Dan. And we want to add the voice of Natasha Hall as we wait to hear from Trump and Netanyahu, non-resident senior associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS. Natasha has been with us for several of the throes in this conflict and back today on an important meeting with these two world leaders. Natasha, it's great to have you. The last time Benjamin Netanyahu was in front of a large public gathering here in America was when he stood before an empty room in the UN General Assembly, knowing, of course, that many Muslim and African nations and even some European nations got up and walked out on him. What was that experience like in informing the Israeli Prime Minister of what he might be stepping into today?
Thank you for having me, Joe. I mean, I think that picture of Netanyahu in an empty room, which is supposed to include all of the world members, pretty much says it all. Israel is completely isolated in the world aside from President Trump in the United States. And so a lot comes down to this meeting with President Trump today, because what Netanyahu needs to show to Israelis is that they still have the backing of the United States. And if that wanes, then Israelis are in real trouble here. We are seeing more recognition of a Palestinian state, increasing support to the flotillas that are trying to get to Gaza, and really just this incredible support that's been thrown towards Palestinians and this rage about the ongoing war in Gaza. And so, I mean, I think that should have been a wake-up call. Maybe it should have been a wake-up call a long time ago for Netanyahu, but hopefully that portends something positive for these discussions this morning.
Well, Natasha, how is this pressure contributing to the talks today? We know at the center is this 21-point plan floated by the U.S. We gleaned some details, including that it would include the release of all remaining hostages. 20 out of the remaining 48 are believed to still be alive. It would also include Israel gradually withdrawing troops from Gaza. From what you've seen, the reports about this plan, what is realistic for getting a deal done?
I mean, I think that's the ultimate question. And you mentioned pressure at the beginning of this. And I think the big issue to date, and I've said this multiple times on this program, is that we haven't seen tangible pressure from the United States at all in the past 2 years. And that has essentially been the reason that the war has gone on. And President Macron of France has recently said as much, that it is the United States that is capable of ending this war. And so unless we see real pressure on any of these points, these 21 points that Trump and Witkoff and others have laid out, I think we're not going to see much progress. We might see progress on those first few points, namely the release of the hostages. And what is interesting with this plan is it lays out the release of all 48 hostages alive and dead within the first 48 hours. Now, if that happens, then Netanyahu basically gets a pass from the biggest opposition to the continuation of this war, which is the hostage families. And so, there's a lot of things that can happen with the details of the rest of the points. And Netanyahu, as he has done in the past, could potentially continue the war if any of those points are not carried through.
I'm really compelled by this meeting yesterday in New York, Natasha. Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Benjamin Netanyahu. They met for several hours, reportedly, to try to get ahead of some of the stickier points today. Is Jared Kushner going to be the one who solves this if it gets done?
There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, including former UK politician Tony Blair in this. And I think that the big issue is going to be Netanyahu agreeing to some of these points regarding amnesty for Hamas fighters that agree to peace, but namely and ultimately Palestinian statehood and a Palestinian governing authority in Gaza and the West Bank. Because Netanyahu quite defiantly in that UN General Assembly speech reiterated the fact that he is not in favor of a Palestinian state. And that is ultimately the core problem with this conflict, the lack of Palestinian self-determination. So the hope, I think, for a lot of people is that we can at least get to the point where we have aid flooding into an area stricken with famine, that we can have, at least a cessation of hostilities to save lives on the ground right now. But I think the details as they roll out are going to be very, very difficult. And, I would just point out that Israeli activists have recently put down a picture in front of the US Embassy in Israel of Netanyahu with a Pinocchio nose sticking it into Trump's eyes, saying, "Don't be fooled again." And I think that pretty much says it all. I mean, Netanyahu is really a political animal. He's a survivor. And so he might agree to many, many points, but then say, but. And I think everything has to do with that but. So we could very well see a continuation of this war, but along other lines.
Well, another important meeting that happened last week in New York, we know that President Trump met with leaders of Arab nations, including Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Natasha, how should we be looking at those countries in the region and what sort of role they play here when it comes to the future of the conflict and getting any sort of deal done?
I mean, they have tried to play a larger role in setting forth some kind of peace process or plan or redevelopment plan. And I think that the recent Israeli strike on Doha was really a red line for especially the GCC countries, the oil-rich Gulf countries in the region that are U.S. partners, because they saw this strike ultimately as a threat to their own security. And a threat to their relationship with the United States. And we saw this with this unprecedented security pact between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia recently, which was really, I think, ultimately not a warning necessarily, but showing the United States that there are other players in the world that they will have to seek alliances with if the U.S. cannot be counted on.
Interesting to see reporting last week, not to diverge too far from the path that is being discussed in this meeting, Natasha, but reporting by the Washington Post that Iran, for some years now, has been digging and tunneling into a much deeper facility than we even saw at Fordo, near the area that we bombed at Natanz. The idea that Iran could, in fact, be continuing to develop a nuclear weapons program is something that President Trump said he would act on if told about it, that there could be further strikes in Iran. How would that play into what we're talking about today?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't doubt that Iran continues to have a desire to have some kind of nuclear program here, and that the destruction that we saw earlier this year is not the end of this issue. But what's interesting, if you connect it to what's happening right now with this 21-point plan that Trump is proposing, is when I was talking to diplomats earlier about what Netanyahu might do. What we've seen in the past when there's been ceasefire deals or potential peace agreements on display, he distracts through another strike somewhere in the region. So I think that's what we could potentially see again with Netanyahu talking to Trump about the need to deal with this threat that you just mentioned about Iran digging tunnels even further in.
And sticking with sort of the regional picture here, Axios had reported earlier that Netanyahu called Qatari officials to discuss the strike that we saw earlier this month in Doha against senior Hamas leadership. I'm wondering what you make of that dynamic, since we know that the Qataris have been a big force here when it comes to mediating in the peace talks.
I mean, it's hard to understate how unprecedented this strike was. Qatar has been used for many, many years now as a neutral place for mediation with the Iranians, with Hamas, etc. And so I think that the fact that, the Israelis hit Doha, actually killed a Qatari as well in the process, was really enraging for the Qataris. And so that this phone call had to take place. One of those points in that 21-point plan is actually an agreement that Israel will not strike Qatar ever again. Very, very specific there, very intentional. And I think that the reason for that is the U.S. needs to show that it will ultimately protect its GCC partners and, of course, mediation and discussions that continue to happen in Qatar.
Spending time with Natasha Hall from CSIS on Bloomberg TV and radio as we wait for the news conference, the bilateral news conference, to get underway at the White House with President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. To what extent do you expect the indulgence of questions here from the media, Natasha? President Trump most recently held a summit with Vladimir Putin. Not one question was taken in what was billed as a news conference. Will it depend on the outcome of their talks?
I mean, I think it could depend on the outcome of their talks, but
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great supplements I offer. We'll find out probably tomorrow. I'm going to end the broadcast today, but I'll have my comments probably tomorrow on the conference, the press conference. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.